Come on. Hey, what's happening, YouTube people? Hey, welcome to the Gas Mask and Hand Grenades YouTube channel. You guys know me as Metal Madness Jeff. It's great to see y'all here tonight, guys. We have an OG, a true legend. We have got from the Floridian death metal scene. We've got one of the original, honestly, this guy's like a true original, super fucking cool guy. We've got Kelly Shaefer of Atheist here with us. He's also fronted the band Neurotica, and we're also going to talk a little bit about a new band, a new project band, I think it's a band. We're going to get into that, and a band called Till the Earth. And without further ado, let me bring Kelly in here real quick, and he can shake his head. He's shaking his head going, nope. Did I screw it up? What did I say? Well, I said till the earth.
It's the same kind of dirt and the earth, you know.
Pretty much, yeah. God, I don't know what. Why did I write that down, dude? I'm sorry, man. Till the dirt.
Like anybody. Okay. No, it's brand new, man. No worries.
We're gonna get there. We're gonna get down there. We're gonna get to that. I think. First of all, let me thank you for being here. We've had a couple conversations before we've actually met face to face and seen each other, which is super cool. We got off to a funny start though, kind of a little bit.
Yeah, we did.
you want to relay that little interesting moment there?
Yeah, I got a note from I think our manager about, or maybe it was from one of you guys about doing the podcast or whatever, and I went to go look at it, and as I recalled, and I still haven't researched just to find out whether I'm just completely messing up and it was a different podcast. But in the first 5 minutes or so of the podcast, there was a comparison between me and the guy from Mudvayne, and it fucking infuriated me. So I was like, listen, man, they got Google. You know what I mean? They could Google and see that we were around a long time before Mudvayne ever was. So I didn't get my vocal style from that guy. And so, months went by. And then whenever you reconnected with our manager and she asked me about it, and then I went over and realized, wait a minute, are these those guys? And so what did I do? Rather than be, a dick about it, I just called.
Oh, you called me?
Yeah, I was like, hey, man, full transparency, like Mudvayne, like, and so you were, and it's great because it actually ended up, I know that we'll be friends forever now, because of.
No, it was, you know what, when you brought it up, I'm like, Mudvayne, like what? Like, because I know one song from Mudvayne, that Falling song or whatever. That's it.
And like I told you back in 2010 when we got reviews for Jupiter, these, journalism has like gone down the shitter, and now anybody with a computer calls himself a journalist,
True.
And so, there was a lot of comparisons of my vocal style to Mudvayne, to the Chad Kroeger guy or whatever. Not Chad Kroeger. I don't know what the fuck his name is.
That's Nickelback.
Yeah, that's Nickelback.
That's almost as insulting. Although Chad Kroeger's bank account much bigger than Chad Gray's. Exactly. Yeah.
What is it? Chad Gray?
I think it's Gray. I don't remember. I honestly don't know any of the guys in the band, Kelly. I don't.
Yeah, I don't either. But no big deal. Listen, props to them. They're a very, good band. They've had success, and
I was just gonna say,
I don't hate them. I mean,
we're not shitting on them. I get it, right?
No, not at all. It's just that let's tell the story correctly. I mean, I'm old. I've been around for a while. I was around before Mudvayne, so no, I did not get my vocal style from that. And anybody that sort of has listened to Atheist over the years knows. And so it's not it's not a big deal. It's just a funny story of how we met, really. I mean, and I called you and said, hey, what the fuck?
Well, the funny part is then you got me thinking, and I'm like, did we do that? Like, I'm like, so I went and listened to the whole thing. Now, there was one mention of nu metal in regards to Neurotica, and that's from Nick, who I'm bringing on a little later, and he can defend himself. You can ask him about that. But I don't hear I must, full transparency to you, I did not know about Neurotica. I'd heard about it from your podcasts or your interviews you've done earlier, but I didn't know them because in the 90s, man, I kind of checked out of metal. I'm not going to lie, dude. I was a Soundgarden, Alice in Chains guy. I was not a Pearl Jam guy, but I was fully Voivod, stuff like that.
Neurotica was not a metal band, though. I mean, really, it was just a really hard rock band. I mean,
Right.
So we I also was a huge Soundgarden fan and a huge fan of Seattle and all that, and including Pearl Jam. People can fucking hate on me all they want. Pearl Jam wrote great songs, and there were some amazing performances on especially at least the first record.
First 3 albums I can dig, but after that, I'll
no, they
check
lost
them.
me. Yeah, they lost me in kind of a Michael Stipe land they're in now.
Yeah,
it drives me nuts. But Soundgarden always has been godly and amazing.
fucking love them.
And so Neurotica was really inspired a lot by that, Caius and the stoner rock sort of movement. But it was more marketable. So it was, but that was that. What's weird about that band is, coming from the underground and going to Neurotica and sort of having a higher profile, being on the radio and all the things that don't come with
Atheist.
With an underground band.
Right.
It was almost 10 years of a completely different career, and a lot of people don't know from one to the other. Like I was almost the singer for Velvet Revolver. I got down to the final 4.
I want to talk to you that. Can we get to that in a little bit?
Yeah, I just want to say quickly before we get into that I didn't tell those guys anything about Atheist, and they didn't know anything about it. So I felt like I was kind of living 2 different lives in a way, musically. So,
well, here's the thing. I know you from I knew you primarily from Atheist, right? And your vocal style in Neurotica very different.
Yeah,
very different.
Yeah.
And I was kind of like, whoa, this dude really can sing. Like, not that you couldn't sing an Atheist, but it's a completely different style of vocal.
Yeah, I wouldn't not allowed, but it wouldn't be appropriate for me to use that vocal style with Atheist because Atheist has always had its template, and so I've never been able to use my singing voice ever with Atheist until my new band, Till the Dirt.
Right, and we're gonna get to that because there's a good
segues galore, man.
I know it's gonna get really fucked up. What time you go to bed normally? Like 4 a.m. It's gonna be a long one, dude. All right, I'll tell you what I kind of want to do first is, again, so if you do want to go re-listen to the podcast, I'll send you that link again. And I'll tell you, if you do find that Chad Gray comparison, man, I will get on my knees and I will mea culpa all day long. But I'm 99.9% sure it wasn't there because I listened to the whole thing because I'm like, man, if it's in there, I better find it and I better talk to this guy and get this squared away.
Yeah,
so
no big deal. It was just a cool way to meet, though. Anyway, and you took it on the chin really well, because you were like, no, the pushback was nice, I mean, you weren't like, oh, you were like, oh, I don't think I said that. I was like, maybe I'm wrong, So we we're both second guessing ourselves, but
we did.
Nonetheless, here we are, man. It led us to here right now, and we're.
Let me tell you a quick little story. Back in May, one of my fucking absolute favorite 3-run albums by a band in the early 90s was by Warrior Soul. You know Warrior Soul?
I remember them, yeah.
Corey Clark?
Yep.
All right. Their first album, Last Decade, Dead Century, Drugs, God, and the New Republic, Salutations from the Ghetto Nation, fucking amazing albums.
It fell through the crack with me.
But we did a deep dive on them. Me and another guy, he's from Seattle. He's pretty opinionated, and we laid our opinions down. And like you said, for better or worse, Kelly, I kind of look at like what I'm doing and what we're doing on YouTube as kind of the new zines.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
We're kind of instead of writing in print, we're doing it here online.
Yeah.
And am I a professional at this? Absolutely not. No. But you know what I am? I'm a professional fan that loves this music and goes way back to the beginning because I'm actually older than you. So it's one of those things where I feel like I'm pretty legitimate, but I don't know everything, man. I can't possibly.
That's the key to being a great journalist or a great, a talk show person or a magazine editor is recognizing that, there's always something new you can find from music. There's always something new you can find from stories of bands, the way things have unfolded. And, that's what's amazing about music. There's all kinds of fun facts that you learn from different people because, stories get told about bands for years and years, and then you meet somebody that actually spent time in the band and you find out it's not really accurate. But anyway, I mean, I think that the experience of listening as a fan for 30 plus years, gives you the right to to do stuff like this, and it makes it interesting for somebody who's 20 years old that doesn't know all the backstory of a lot of bands,
And that's what we want to do this for, and that's what we want to get a lot of this stuff straight from the horse's mouth. I mean, you were there, you lived it, you did it, you've done it. So we're going to get there one sec. Corey saw I asked for an interview with him. He lives in, I think he lives in New Zealand. Oh no, he lives in Greece. Long story short, he saw our podcast, and he's done a lot of albums since then that they're very low budget and they're just not that great.
Really?
And I tried very hard to be as positive as I could, and I didn't shit on them, but we weren't glowing about them. We when we gave them number marks, they were 4s and 5s out of 10s, that kind of thing. He saw it. I sent him the link. I wasn't embarrassed by any of it, and I didn't think any of it was personal. It was more about the whole creative. Like some of these albums, dude, they sounded like they were recorded in like my bedroom with a really bad PC, that kind of thing.
I mean, you got to have thick skin to be in this business, you know what I mean? And
Exactly.
I'm sure that deep down inside, he knew that you weren't lying. So I've always appreciated people that were that candid and all that.
He wrote all kind of shit in the comments of the video. I had to get rid of it.
Oh,
we're not going to do an interview. Clearly, he canceled the interview. And I got to tell you though, and Corey, if you ever come across this, those first 3 albums you did are fucking monster albums. After that, I can't really get on board, and I'm sorry, but that's just how I feel. It's my personal opinion. But anyway,
happens to me all the time with the atheist people because they're not fans of Neurotica in any way. And
right.
So, I have, like I said, this dual thing happening in my career where one side of my career doesn't like the other side of my career. And in terms of style, so,
yeah.
It happens. Well, you can't please everybody, you know what I mean? But as an artist, I'll please myself.
What I mean? That's the main thing you got to do, man. That's the important thing right there. So, let's talk about before pre-atheist and pre-oblivion and pre-ravage. Okay. Let's talk about Kelly Shaefer a little bit. Let's get to know you a little bit. And tell me about the first memories that you ever had of music, your first exposure to it, maybe as a child or a teenager or something like that, and how maybe it affected you from an emotional or even a physical standpoint. And I like to give this example. When I was maybe about 6 years old, my mom used to play Carole King's Tapestry. Do you know that album? I feel the earth move under my feet. Simon and Garfunkel's Bridge Over Troubled Water, and Rockabye Sweet Baby James by James Taylor. Those were my 3 first real memories of music.
Sounds like your mom might have smoked some pot.
What's that?
Sounds like your mom might have smoked some pot.
She might have. I don't remember that, but she may very well have. But she was pretty cool. She wasn't a hippie chick, but she was pretty cool. But those are great albums.
Taylor, Garfunkel, Simon and Garfunkel. Those are. What year was that? In the 60s?
72.
Oh, 72. Yeah. Okay. So a little post hippie, but.
A little bit, just a little bit, but she wasn't listening to Sabbath. I know that, sadly, but she was listening to good music. Those are all great albums, classics actually. But what do you remember from your childhood? And can you affix any kind of a memory to a musical experience or something like that as a kid or as a teenager or something like that?
100%. Yeah, my mom was never really a super musical person. She wasn't really into. When she was younger, she would dance, and she was kind of into country music and stuff like that. So she was never a musical influence. She was a human influence to me. But my father was a rocker, and I remember, being really, really young and him being into Hendrix and Janis Joplin and stuff like that. And then when my mom and dad broke up, he moved away to Ohio, to a different part of Ohio. And when I would go stay with him, he bought this Jeep, and it had speakers on the roll bar. And I'll never forget that he played "Let There Be Rock." Like AC/DC, "Let There Be Rock," and I just I thought he was the coolest fucking guy all of a sudden ever, and and it kind of gave me that bug, and I still to this day I can envision that and remember it. He's gone now, but and it's one of the few kind of really cool moments we had musically together because it all ended up getting sort of it all dissipated as I got older.
Yeah.
But I actually didn't continue from that level of rocking. I had a babysitting job for a while, and so I would go out and buy albums. And I was really into Pink Floyd, and I was into the Beatles, and I had my mom. When my mom and dad split up, she took on a lot of friends that were biker people.
Right.
So they turned me on to Alice Cooper and Black Sabbath and Zeppelin, and so I really got a healthy dose of fundamentals and sort of classic sort of rock and then of course when I became a teenager and started smoking pot, and there was Van Halen, and obviously Back in Black came out when I was like 12, and and so that was a big deal. And Rush, like we fucking loved Rush, you know, and you know that's two different kind of things, you know.
Right
but
there,
I also
man.
but Triumph was a really important band to me. Like you and I were talking off the record about Zebra. And Triumph, Rick Emmett to me as a guitar player was fucking unbelievable, man. And,
unbelievable. Underrated. Underrated.
Yeah, I mean his voice too. Like he was playing the shit out of his guitar and singing his ass off. And I guess it's because it's, you know, that higher kind of vocal. It's not a maybe it's not looked upon with the same vigor as an AC/DC, you know, an everyman's rock. You know,
right?
They're Canadian, and I don't know, man. Call me crazy. I love the Canadians, man. You know, I mean, I think that they, you know, a lot of good music has come out of there. But yeah, so those are the things I remember the most. And you know, so I would attribute it to that early listen of riding around. My dad lived around this lake called Lake Lorelei, and we would ride around the lake and listen to Let There Be Rock, and I just couldn't get over it. And so
how old were you?
Probably 9, maybe not even 9, 8 or 9 years old. And then that coupled with my mom's colorful new friends that she was hanging out with and going out to bars with, that was a big influence on me as well. And I was never a Kiss fan. I was never a I missed that boat. I never. I mean, I can appreciate Detroit Rock City and a couple of songs from Kiss, but I always found it to be super elementary.
Well, first concert, 1979, Sam Houston Coliseum, Kiss for the Dynasty Tour.
You can't top them for their stage show. I mean, you know, I mean, they're actually the kings. You know, I mean, but I just musically, you know, I don't know. Somehow, I was into Yes and Zappa and things like that when I was really young. You know, I always like interesting music as opposed to just pop music or straight up, you know, just basic music. You know, where it's, so sorry, my computer's being a jerk. There we go.
No, you're good. You're good. Second concert, 1980.
Mine? Aerosmith.
No, I'm showing you my second concert.
Oh. I was thinking of my. Yeah. Oh, that was your second concert ever?
Second concert, 1980 for Permanent Waves, dude.
Wow.
That's killer.
That's a big jump in musicianship.
Well, that was show number 1 of 56 that I got to see in my lifetime. I probably bought Neil Peart at least 2 BMWs with the amount of money I spent on it. So
that must have been a huge shocker going from who was Peter Criss playing drums when he saw?
Yeah, he was with him. Yeah, yep. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so Peter Criss to Neil is a huge jump.
first time I ever smoked pot was at a Rush show, man.
Nice.
That Rush show, and that was the 1980. They still were doing the Kimona thing, so they did. They were still doing everything. They were doing all of 2112 except for the soliloquy part. They cut that part out. So you know that show I got to see Natural Science, Jacob's Ladder.
Oh my God.
All of 2112, all of this album, Prelude. You know the Prelude, plus the Cygnus X1 from Farewell to Kings and Xanadu, man. I mean, like, I could have died right then and there and been a happy dude. You know what I mean?
2112 was the first record that when I got a guitar and I started actually being able to put chords together, was the first album that I started playing along to. And and I, you know, and almost just the same way as you know, when he discovers the guitar and he's playing those chords and they're all
he's just kind of plunking around. Yep.
And you know, that was me. I was literally plunking around, and then. You know, there was a period right after that record where I was just staying with my mom, and I started taking acid, and it would allow me to spend 5 or 6 hours playing guitar right in a row. And so then I was into early Candlemass, Merciful Fate, early Metallica, you know, and so my chops were starting to pick up. And my sister's boyfriend, who got me into playing guitar at the time, he was like this guy who, you know, he played like he would play Triumph songs, he would play like Styx and shit like that, and I just thought, man, I'd love to be able to play guitar. In the beginning of playing guitar, it was for all the wrong reasons. You know, it was like all about like maybe I could maybe get a girlfriend or something.
Get chicks,
yeah.
right? Of course.
I could sit at the back of the bus and play Sweet Madam Blue, and that would be cool, you know.
All the chicks will just flock to me in the back of the bus.
and it quickly became like I don't give a shit about. I need to learn this instrument, and so I spent 2 years, and I surpassed my sister's boyfriend so much. He was just like, wow, you know.
Now, how old were you when you picked up the guitar?
14.
I was going to ask, so is the guitar the only instrument you play, or do you play drums, or do you? I mean, obviously you can play bass, I'm sure, a little bit.
Yeah, I play bass. I mean, not with my fingers, so not a real bass player.
Right.
But I've always been a composer, so to speak. So like I write drums in my head, so I mouth out a lot of drums. If I'm playing a lot of the Atheist drums that I worked with Steve Flynn on, if I had a drum idea, it would be like, you know, and we would speak that language with each other. And and so these days, when I made the Till the Dirt record, I did all the drums myself, and then I had a live drummer play the drums that I wrote, and it was a really refreshing scenario where I could literally, because you know, you can't tell a drummer like, all right, play this part 100 times in a row perfectly, so I can write this guitar part to it, you know.
Right.
A whole different experience. And so I really love today's technology and the availability of a guy like me who has all this, you know, I have all this music in my head, but
all in your head. Yeah.
It's hard to find 4 other people that, first of all, you got to get past somebody's ego and also somebody's, you know, want to do their own thing.
Sure.
Which I understand. But I move at a faster pace than a lot of people when writing. I like to sort of combust on the spot, and I don't like spending 4 or 5 days on a song ever. Like it's a conversation like we're having right now. Like this could either go really well or it's going to go really shitty, but whatever's going to happen, this podcast is going to stick around for the next 10 years, for better or for worse.
True.
And I like to write music like that. You know, I like to just, you know, and a lot of the songs that I write they happen in one sitting. And so I never like to think about things too much. I think that usually the first idea that comes to your head is usually the better one. So when working with other people, they don't work that way necessarily. And so they'll be like, well, I got to take this home and work on it. I'm like, you know, I don't subscribe to that philosophy. So it's tough. So the idea of me having my own home studio during COVID was a really great thing. You know, I mean, to be able to just sit here for 7 hours in a row and not hear anybody's opinion or anybody's wrinkled nose or anybody stomping their feet because they didn't get a riff in the song. To me, it's never been a bad. It's not that I want to do everything. It's just that I have an overabundance of music in my head, and it gets frustrating if I have to navigate through people's feelings and all that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And, but I also, you know, empathize with them because you know, they're probably looking for the same thing that I'm looking for. You know, the ability to get their ideas out. But if we're not on the same page, and with Atheist, it was always very hard. I was super pleased to be able to have the guys that I had in the band because I could mouth things out to Steve Flynn and he could play them, whereas most drummers couldn't. And Ram Berkey is a guitar player. He was so great. And, you know, I would be like, listen, just play you know, I'm going to play this and you play this opposite, you know, this counter rhythm to it. And he would just fucking flawlessly play it. Or he would find beautiful harmonies. You know, a lot of the great harmonies in the Atheist music found those. He was really, really, you know, all the musicians that I've ever played with, I've said this a million times, are way better than me, you know, musically, mechanically.
Right.
You know, my forte has always been, you know, putting songs together and arranging and kind of siphoning out the shit and keeping in the good, you know.
Right.
And everybody, you know, has a role, and that's an important role just as much as it is being a flashy killer solo player. Because there's a lot of guys that can play their ass off but can't write a song for the life of them. Ingve Malmsteen.
Right.
But you know, can't get a better guitar player than that. But man, he's not a great songwriter. You know?
Nah. Well, he's written the same song for about 18 albums in a row now.
Because he's writing songs to solo to.
Exactly.
You know, his mind is backwards, you know. And
I think we touched on one of our private phone conversations. I mentioned Porcupine Tree, and I think you know about them, right?
Yeah, I do. Yeah.
Okay, so I didn't work for them directly. I worked for their manager and did a lot of stuff from 99 through 2010. And Steve and I were pretty good buddies back then, and I'm still friends with Richard, and I don't really talk to Steve anymore. I won't get into why, but we just don't. But anyway, he's very much like that too. He's a good player, but he's not Guthrie Govan. He's not Yngwie Malmsteen. He's not that guy. He's like you said, you are like an arranger, a producer, a guy that puts the pieces together and hears it all in here and gets those performances out of the people around him. Kind of the same similar things. So,
Yeah, I think that I've been able to. I look at other musicians that I play with as like almost like colors or brushes if I'm painting, and if I need if I want to create this particular line, I know how to pull that out of people. And because I think I've been a brutally honest person, a lot of people kind of when you play with somebody new and you're like and they do a solo and you're like and they, what do you mean my girlfriend thinks I'm amazing, my mom thinks
yeah.
Good for you, but I that's not going to cut it right now. And
right.
Sometimes when you challenge people, they step up, and if they do, they're shocked at their own. And it's the same way in sports. I mean, people never know their own greatness. And sometimes it takes a special coach or a special personality in their life to
pull that out.
Yeah, and it's happened for me. I mean, not that I ever thought I was great, but I've just been able to work with a lot of really great. Brian Johnson, for instance, was a great help to me vocally because he didn't pull any punches. He was just like, when it sucked, he told me it fucking sucked, and that was hard to hear from one of the greatest singers on, greatest frontmen on earth. But I rather than get angry about it, I was just like, fuck you. You're not going to tell me. I'm going to fucking, you want to hear some shit? I'm going to give you some shit. And eventually, won him over and we were, we made some really great art together. So I think it helps, but it is tough to go through to have somebody be so honest with you because, in your own community, locally, there's a lot of local superheroes. And I say it all the time. I see a lot of bands, from small towns where they, they're drawing 150 people and they just think they're there. And it's like, great. Okay. Now take that to New York City. Or go to LA and see how that works out.
Good luck, right?
Yeah, you're a big fish in a small pond, but when you get in the ocean, it gets really, really sketchy. So you've got to always think like that. You've always got to think about making music for Europe, London, New York, and LA. If you can make music that matters to those cities, then you got a real shot at making music that the world cares about.
Let's let me hit a few other things here, and we'll get into the band stuff more. When did you realize that you wanted to be a professional musician, or are you still realizing that?
No, I think that in the beginning it was just we were 4 friends who were just excited about music in general, and it was a really exciting time back then because there were so many new bands coming out.
Yeah,
Exodus, Possessed, Metallica. To me, it was such a rebellion against what we were up against there, which was the White Snakes and the Poisons and the Motley Crues.
Right.
It was like this gang mentality, that happened back then. And I just remember I was more excited to see Metallica in a major magazine the first time than I was to see my own band.
Really?
I was like, yeah, absolutely. Because I had the demo for Metallica and and in my surroundings around in my town, it was full of guys that were into Ozzy, they were into, again, Motley Crue and all that, and all the chicks dug it. And so I was walking down the hallway of my high school with a boombox playing fucking Merciful Fate, Don't Break the Oath, and Show No Mercy from Slayer. And they were just like, what the fuck is wrong with you? And I to me, I was like, yeah, good. What's wrong with me? There's nothing wrong with me. I mean, when you're a kid, you gotta hang your hat on something. And
right.
And I was not a popular kid. So I took great pride in scaring the shit out of jocks and fucking cheerleaders and people that, already thought I was a weirdo anyway.
All the establishments.
Well, I come from, Sarasota, Florida is a very affluent town.
Okay.
But not all of us are rich, So I didn't grow up rich, but the school I went to had students that drove Porsches and Mercedes.
Wow.
And the teachers.
Really?
Oh my God, yeah. Sarasota's they come, these kids are driving at 16 years old these amazing cars, and the teachers are pulling up in an old Nova, And so I was just, I had to find my way to make my mark. And to me, I felt like I had this super great secret, all this weird music that nobody knew about. Like I remember, Exciter and Sodom and just every time I would play it for anybody that was outside of my circle, they'd look terrified or concerned, or to me that was a reward, you know.
Yeah, right.
That was great. And yeah, so I don't think I ever thought about it on a professional level. I mean,
Well, let me interject just for a sec.
For what?
Let me interject just for a second, because of tying into that question, I wanted to ask, if you didn't necessarily think I want to be a professional musician or quote unquote rock star, did you have any other aspirations? Like, I want to become a mechanic, I want to go to college.
No.
I want to, no. Okay.
Those are my dad's aspirations for me.
Okay.
My dad was always like, you can't, there's thousands and thousands of guitar players. What makes you think you're going to make a difference? Like, you need a trade, you need to learn a trade. And I was like, so I guess in my, inadvertently, I knew that this is what I always wanted to do. And my mom knew that this is all what I always wanted to do. And she supported it financially and spiritually, because I didn't want to work. I wanted to play guitar. I was a fucking lazy teenager in the sense of what a parent would typically want out of their teenager. But my mom knew I was spending hours and hours learning how to play guitar, not running around being an asshole or committing crimes or anything, but just right playing. And I think she, a credit to her, she kept supporting that, and then realized when we were like 19 we got a record deal, and she just thought that was amazing. And I think from that point forward I never really looked back. I always hoped that I could do this for my whole life, but never imagined that those records that I made from 19 to 22 or 23 years old, we'd still be talking about them in our 50s. It's just crazy.
Hey man, that's why when I let off I said you're an OG, man, because you really are. I mean, and we're going to talk about that in a minute. I got a big question about that, and it's one of those ones that might be a little touchy, but I know you kind of don't usually shy away from that. So we're gonna see where we go with that. But what guitarists or musicians or major artists really affected and influenced you the most as a young guy? So I heard some of those influences like Rick Emmett and Triumph and Rush and Alex Lifeson. And what were your big ones? Because like for me, dude, it was I was a huge Yes fan too. So it was Lifeson number one. Lifeson was number one. Rick Emmett, Frank Marino, and Mahogany Rush, man. Fucking Frank Marino is just insane.
One of the closet heroes of like nobody ever gives that guy. Frank Marino is almost like Atheist in a way,
Yeah.
It's like, hey, wait a minute, I mean, this guy was great for a long time, man. But people talked about Hendrix and Stevie Ray Vaughan and all that, but what about Frank Marino, man? I mean,
well, I can say this much, and you know this if you know Frank Marino. Frank Marino was a motherfucking shredder in the 70s. In the 70s.
Yeah. So there you go. And I encourage people to go back and you can Spotify that shit. And check it out. But I think that I was inspired by. So I think a lot of people now that I've had a 30-year career being sort of known around sort of musicianship and technicality would be surprised to find that a lot of my influences are very basic. Tony Iommi, Angus Young, Alex Lifeson. I wouldn't say Alex is basic, but yeah, he's not basic at all. But he's not a flashy player. I was never a Randy Rhoads guy. I was never a Vivian Campbell guy. I was never I was never really into those flashy guy as a musical influence. I always appreciated Steve Vai. I always appreciated guys that were capable of playing that way. But I always found them to be involved in bands that didn't really write music that I liked. So it's like, okay, I like the solo, but then the rest of the song just fucking annoys the shit out of me. So I never followed Guitar Hero. So I don't know where musicianship I think came from in the early days of death metal and extreme metal. Man, it was messy and out of tune and sloppy, and we were one of them. I mean, when we were called Ravage, we were messy and shitty, and I think that the difference was that we just, as friends and learning to play our instruments together. Myself, Roger Patterson, Steve Flynn, Ran Berkey. Ran wasn't even there in the beginning, but Ran was a really interesting interjection into what became Atheist, because he came from California, and in those days, record distribution, and the only way you could find bands was to go out and get the cassette or this was before CDs even, and vinyl. If you didn't have a good record store in your town, and I mind you, I come from Sarasota, Florida, which was a retirement town with a lot of money, but not a lot of cool. You know, there
stuff
was
to do. Yeah, right.
yeah. So we didn't, you know, it wasn't the ability to find things. So you really had to, you know, so a place like California or LA, where you're getting music firsthand right there, you know, you're able to always, anybody that had a record had to have distribution in LA. So him coming from LA and coming to Sarasota and becoming friends with us and us playing together really turned us on to like Trouble and all these different, you know, different bands that we had never really heard of before. And so that really was an exciting time because it was just, man, there was just so many different kinds of bands that, but the common denominator was this darkness. And that's what I was really drawn to, you know, compared to that flashy fucking hair up here shit. You know, it was just, so I went to the dark side pretty early.
Yeah. I remember seeing Motley Crue. I saw Motley Crue, Rat, and Accept. Who was the odd man out there, obviously, but it was out there.
You know, Motley Crue. Let me just start by saying that in the first album, I didn't hate I didn't hate Motley Crue, and I didn't hate Shout the Devil. I would actually listen to those two records.
That's the tour I saw them on, and it was a good album.
I liken it to how Skid Row is, like in the grand scheme of the hair rock bands of the 80s. Like Skid Row will kick your fucking ass. They'll beat your ass in a fight, and they'll steal your girlfriend, and they fucking rock too. You know, like you can talk shit about Skid Row, but you can't. You know, you can't really because they were actually a very good. I think once they went on tour and had Pantera open for them, I think from that point forward they were like, oh shit, and that's a credit to them that they recognized what was going on around them and turned up the heat on it. Whereas Motley Crue went backwards. You know, they went from kind of rocking to this arena rock shit.
Well, they went from Shout at the Devil to what Theater of Pain.
Yeah.
And I saw them on that tour, and it was weak, man. Loudness was better than they were, and Loudness opened for them. So there you go. You know, real quick, we're going to get into Oblivion and Ravage after two more quick questions here. What was your first concert?
Aerosmith.
Oh, on what album?
It was 1979. I feel like Toys in the Attic.
That sounds right. Or was that 78? 77 was Rocks, or 76 was Rock. You're right. I think it's probably Toys. What came out after Toys, though? I'm thinking, what was that?
A live bootleg or something like that. I remember there was a live bootleg record that was out around that time, but I was too young of a fan. Like I was again with my mom and her biker friends. And, and that was right before I moved to Florida. You know, thinking back on that, that was my first concert, and then I quickly went to an Eagles concert.
Oh, nice.
I saw Foghat and ZZ Top together back in the day.
Billy Gibbons, man.
I love Foghat, man.
Dude, full for the city.
Pleasure. I love Foghat.
Dude, in 1977, I'm in 8th grade. I fucking played that live album. It's one of the best live albums ever. It's probably not really live, but you know.
I don't know. It sounds pretty live.
Well, all the 70s live albums, you find out now they weren't really live. Like Frampton Comes Alive and Exit Stage Left. Yeah, a lot of them were, fucking Unleashed in the East was almost all overdubbed afterwards. So, really? Yeah, did I just blow it for you now?
Yeah.
Like, fuck you, man. I'm out of here.
No, I think that you know, I saw Foghat live, and I just thought they were incredible. You know, they're one of the few bands that had like the dual guitar thing happening, which I thought was really cool. Obviously, Skinner did a little bit of that as well. And,
sure.
And early Priest, you know, and
Allman Brothers.
Yeah, Allman Brothers. Big. You know, Allman Brothers live here in the area that I live. And
love the Allman.
Huge Allman culture around here.
Yeah. What was your first metal concert? Because I don't really consider Aerosmith metal. And by metal, you know what I'm saying. Like we're now into the 80s, and you know, even if it's the hair metal.
Iron Maiden, yeah.
What tour did you see him on?
Power Slave.
Oh,
yeah, it was Power Slave, I think it was, and you know, definitely right in the same neighborhood of that. I saw Priest, Defenders of the Faith. I remember the lights coming out of that thing's eyes, and so yeah. And I remember the Maiden show had like Twisted Sister and Quiet Riot opening, I think.
Which one for who?
Iron Maiden.
No way, really?
Twisted Sister and maybe it was maybe Quiet Riot opened for Judas Priest, or maybe I'm mixing them up. But those were the scenarios that I saw those bands, and yeah, Iron Maiden was just Iron Maiden and Judas Priest were very important in the early. And those were my first steps in sort of metal, other than Sabbath. But I didn't realize how metal Sabbath was until later, and when I watched everybody else sort of copy their shit. I realized, wait a minute.
The thing about Sabbath is they really started out kind of a blues based band in a lot of ways, but they just got so dark, and Tony started detuning, and Ozzy's fucking voice. That's shit that only happens. That's lightning that strikes once.
Lightning in a bottle, yeah, lightning in a bottle, for sure.
Maybe you mentioned Priest. I told you about Kiss being my first concert in October of '79. 5 days before that show, Priest was actually opening for Kiss, and they went off the tour right before I saw them. Like 2 dates before I saw them, that was the end of their run, and Kiss didn't have an opening band for that.
That was probably the rock and roll era of Judas Priest, probably.
No, 79 would have been Hellbent for Leather.
Okay, 70.
Yeah.
So Kiss
79.
79. Okay.
Yeah. And then we talked about
74.
We talked about Triumph. Did you ever get to see Triumph live?
Oh yeah, like four times. Oh, so good, man. I was really into Triumph. Like,
I love Triumph.
On an unhealthy level when I look back on it now, because I used to try to just tell people, like, how come nobody knows about this guitar player? Like, he plays with almost no sustain, but his picking was so tight, and Rock and Roll Machine, and a lot of people think of Triumph and they think of Magic Power and Fight the Good Fight, but I was like really deep cutting.
Dude, the city,
Rock and Roll Machine.
The city.
I got to remember back on what else? He used to do a lot of like acoustic little.
We do the acoustic interludes like Midsummer's Daydream and Fingertip. Yeah, but I mean,
go back and have a deep dive with Triumph myself, because it's been a lot of years since I've really gone back. And sometimes it's disappointing when you go back to your influences, because it's not quite as fucking cool as it was.
Kelly, we just did a deep dive on them, me and another YouTuber, and we did a 3-hour episode on their whole catalog. And we were literally like fucking little kids, man. I mean, you talk deep cuts. The City off of Rock and Roll Machine, and fucking Blinding Light Show, Moonchild. Oh my God, dude!
Yeah.
And that was like Rush. Those were like their Rush songs, I mean, and I think they were always kind of a little bit in the shadow of Rush, because Rush kind of got bigger sooner.
They were three-piece,
right? But they're great friends. They're really good friends. And
Rick Emmett still sings his ass off. I saw some acoustic thing.
I saw that too. 2012.
So good.
Dude, it was fucking insane when he was doing Lay It on the Line. I'm like, come on, man. Like, how's that possible,
when I watch these vocal shows, like on TV, like The Voice and American Idol and shit like that, it's like there's one small pot of songs for everybody to sing from. Like, you think you're a hot shit singer? Sing fucking, sing Magic Power. You know what I mean? Like, or sing fucking Lay It on the Line, or
sing Lay It on the Line, dude.
I mean, if you think, that shit is it's not. It doesn't just go to high; it stays in high and then goes higher. And there's a lot of really unclaimed territory of greatness with Rick Emmett. And it must be a little frustrating.
Talking about singing high.
Oh yeah, there you go. That was when MTV first came out. The thing I remember the most about Zebra is Who's Behind the Door. One of the first cycle of videos that rolled through the very first era of MTV, which really is aging us right now. All the 20-year-olds watching right now are like, Christ.
They're like these fucking boomers talking about this fucking music, right?
Listen, man. Fuck you, youngins. You go back and take our advice and go listen to this shit. You'll see why we were excited about it.
We did a deep dive on these guys, and we're gonna. That's one of the albums I want you to comment on a little bit. But last kind of general question, then we're jumping into Oblivion, Ravage, and Atheist. What other things do you like to do outside of your musical sphere? I mean, like what other kind of things excite you? I mean, you ride motorcycles.
No, I know. I love being a daddy. It's fucking the best. And that's a thing, being involved and being present,
Yes.
and appreciating it because it goes by so quick. And I mean, it really does. My little boy is 6 in a few days. Like
Thor? His name Thor?
Thor, yeah. And,
okay. Yeah.
He's going to be 6 on the 19th. And it's like, how the fuck does it? It just goes. And my daughter's 17, Lily. And, people have watched her grow up on Facebook through my Facebook site. And I just can't believe she's 17 years old already. And she has autism. And so she taught me a lot about parenting.
Patience.
And patience and parenting. Because that's one of the hardest things about parenting is to have patience. Then you throw in autism, and you really got to fucking learn a lot about yourself, and a lack of selfishness that is required is humbling. And I think that was a really important thing for me because in my 20s and 30s, I didn't have her until I was 38 years old. So I didn't have my first. I have to go back. I have a son named Tim who is 31, who I didn't meet until he was 17. So I didn't raise him, but he's my son. He's amazing man, great father. Gave me 2 grandbabies and that are a little older than actually my son. So I have I'm a very strange dynamic in my whole family.
See, I got you.
My first child that I raised was Lily, and with her autism, it wasn't what I expected. So it's pretty engulfing, I mean. So when you ask me, what are the things I love to do, that was a lot to learn and a task to achieve. But other than that, I love to paint. I do a lot of painting. I've done hundreds of paintings, and I think I have them on, some of them on my Facebook. Some people know that about me, some don't. But I like food. I like cooking.
Ah, nice.
Yeah, and that's pretty much it, man. I mean, I've really anything musical and artistic, sort of, painting and drawing. That was what I did before I started playing guitar. I went to a performing arts school. And he had to audition to get into the school. And so I was really into charcoal drawing and pencil drawing and stuff like that. And when I got into the school, I was in with all the art students, and I saw this guy. The guy that very first made me want to play guitar was this guy named Taylor Koch. And I don't know if he's out there, if he's still alive, but he would sit on a stool in the courtyard of this art school. Do you remember the show Fame?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So it was a performing arts high school where there was dance, there was art, there was television and film, and music. And so I would watch this guy sit on the stool and play, and he would play great Rush songs. He would play really cool Zeppelin songs, and all these girls would sit around him. And he wasn't a particularly attractive guy. And I thought, holy shit, I've never painted or drawn anything that made that many people sit around me in a stool.
Yeah, you're like, yeah.
I mean, when you're young, you're stupid. You do dumb shit. That's how you think about things.
Right, of course.
And so I just thought, I want to play guitar. And then my sister's boyfriend suddenly pops up with an acoustic guitar, and so that was my chance for him to teach me how to play. And once I got sort of infected with the bug, then I was off and running.
I think you told the story on a prior podcast that I saw, but tell the story about your first guitar, because it's funny. It's kind of interesting. What was it? The Otis guitar, right?
The Otis guitar, yeah. My mom was working at the International House of Pancakes, and I really, really wanted a guitar, and she's like, it's just going to be in the closet. You're not gonna play it. And I was like, come on, Greg, which was my sister's boyfriend, he's playing guitar. He's going to show me how to play. So she fucking buys me this. It's an acoustic guitar that this cook at the IHOP. He's like an old black guy with gray hair, one of those just grizzly old black storytellers. And he had this guitar. Right. His name was Otis, and he carved his name into the guitar and he spray painted it black.
No way. And
it had 2 strings. So
when you got it, it had 2 strings.
Yeah, and it remained that way because I didn't know how to put strings on. And then and my sister's boyfriend was like, "That's not a guitar." You got to get another guitar. And my mom was like, "Well, you learn how to play that one, and then I'll work on getting you another one." Little did she know it, and how am I going to learn how to play? It's 2 strings, but
on a piece of crap. Yeah, right.
What I did learn was
my best friend's girlfriend, right?
Yeah, the cars. Yeah, I thought that was great.
Dude, that debut Cars album rules.
What was the other? Lost in the World of Fantasy. Look what you've done to me. What is that Tribe song?
That's it. That's it. Lost in a World of Fantasy. Yeah.
Yeah. So I would.
That's a great song.
I would play that on one string.
No way, really?
I thought I was killing it, man. And so finally, that year, my mom finally bought me an acoustic guitar, and then I learned all the chords that I needed to learn. And then she finally bought me a black Kramer electric guitar,
nice.
and a shitty ass Westbury amp. And
Right.
And then off I went, and I would, I had this friend named Tony Davis, and we would ride around in his car, and we'd get high, and then we would come back to we would maybe pick up a girl or two, and be like, yeah, Kelly can play guitar. And so we would come back to my house, and I'd kick on my Westbury, and I'd play something really shitty, you know what I mean?
But they'd be like,
yeah, it was just, it was just, I miss that feeling, of being that young and excited about something.
Right.
But I actually still feel that excited about, many things when it comes to music. I still have that childlike passion for it,
My first guitar was a Stella acoustic. It had all 6 strings. I will say that right now. I think I got that when I was 8 years old. And you know what I used to do? Unlike you, I was a Kiss fanatic from about 76 to 79. That's where it ended. From Dynasty, or not Dynasty, Destroyer through Dynasty probably was about it. But I lived in Houston, Texas at that time, right? So my mom was working, my stepdad be working. I had I get their stereo. I pull the speakers from the living room up to the front windows of the house. I'd blare Kiss. I'd climb up on the roof, and I'd pretend I was Paul Stanley up there with my acoustic guitar.
What was your go-to Kiss song?
Dr. Love and Love Gun. Love Gun was it. That was the shit. And I still like those albums. I'm not a big Kiss fan. I don't actually own. I don't think I own any Kiss albums, but my first album that I bought with my own money was Rock and Roll Over, which I do still like that album. Like I Want You and Baby. What else is on there? What's that the mellow ballad?
I'm not a Kiss fan, so I don't know.
Hard Luck Woman. Hard Luck Woman. There you go.
Oh, Hard Luck Woman, yeah.
Yeah.
But who was a huge Kiss fan was Roger Patterson.
Oh yeah.
As great of a bass player as he was so into Gene Simmons, man. And if you look at his, if you looked at his stance, from back in the day, like he stood a lot like Gene on stage, like, and he was super into Kiss. For as great a bass player he was, I was shocked that he was really so influenced by Gene Simmons. But I don't think Gene. I mean, I don't know. Gene had a couple of cool bass lines, I guess, but I just never really thought of him as a real bass player. But Roger did. He loved Kiss.
Yeah, man. I can't deny I was there. That was the big fascination. However, you were saying how your mom had some hippie buddies and or biker guys that got you into Cooper. Dude, I remember School's Out, man. That was huge, man.
That would come on the radio. I was like, oh yes. And it's funny what you think is heavy when you're young.
My next door neighbors were 5 older boys. One was about 2 or 3 years older than me. And then the oldest one was probably, he's got to be like 70 now. They'd play pool in the garage and they'd crank tunes. And I remember definitively Aqualung being played.
Yeah,
I love fucking Jethro Tull. Yes, Close to the Edge.
So good.
Cheech and Chong's Up in Smoke.
Dude, hold on. High school.
Cheech all the time.
We would like cruise around. We had a killer like when we were teenagers, me and my friend Tony would cruise around. We were thieving little assholes. We would go steal speakers out of cars. Just dumb shit you do when you're a teenager. And we would try to make his stereo as good as we would cruise through the high school, cranking that all the time. You get a goddamn job before sundown, or we're shipping you off the. And we just thought that was the funniest thing. So it's funny that you bring that up because it's like that album is there's so many cool songs on it.
Oh yeah. Oh, it's good.
And all that shit. But
the other one was George Carlin.
We definitely, you and I would have been friends, man.
Dude. Well, I think we're friends now. So there you go.
Yeah, but I mean, back then we would have been homies for sure.
But listen, tell me a little bit about. You talked about Roger. So talk to me about how Oblivion / Ravage. Talk about what that was, how it created, where it formed, and how these guys came into your life and where you went with that originally, with the original band, so to speak.
So Oblivion was I in school, like I said, I came out of this Beatles thing and then I started playing guitar, and so I dug into stuff that was more guitar orientated. So I had these 2 friends, Mark Shapiro and Mike Cooling, who one played bass, one played drums, and we would get in his bedroom and play like Breaking the Law and shit like that. And I have some funny pictures from back then. But they once I wanted to get a warehouse that we were going to rehearse at, they weren't allowed to do that. They weren't allowed to bring their drums or their bass stuff to this warehouse because we were still, really young.
Right.
15 years
How old?
old.
I was going to say, how old are you here?
15, I think.
Okay.
So Steve Flynn was in us. Like I said, our high school and junior high school was full of affluent kids and poor kids, and there was really no in between. And Steve Flynn was friends with all the kids that were like well off and affluent. He was doing pretty well himself with his family, but he was kind of cool though. He would wear like AC/DC shirts, and he had long hair, and so he was sort of an outcast amongst those elite kids. And but he used to make fun of me because I would wear Beatles shirts all the time. He was just passing in the hallway. Like I didn't know him really that well. So fast forward to me finally getting a warehouse and realizing that these two guys can't, that I want to play in a band with, can't bring their stuff there and they can't be in a band. Steve Flynn comes to that warehouse. There was another local band in town at the time called Havoc. And they were playing like Hit the Lights and they were playing Motorhead and all that. And I looked up to them so much.
They were older?
Yeah. Well, yeah, they were a little older than us.
Yeah.
But I'm still friends with all those guys, Clayton and Pat. And they were a big influence on us early on as well. And they turned us on to a lot of music that we hadn't heard. And they were also writing original music, which was inspiring, which is something you don't really think about doing when you're learning how to play guitar. So so they knew Steve and they brought him up. And the first thing we did was play, I think, Fight Fire with Fire. Together. To me, it was like, wait a minute, you know about The Secret? You know what I mean? It was like, because Metallica was like this thing that you had to be really fucking cool to know about Metallica. It's hard for people in their 20s to imagine that being the case now, but that shit was super underground back then, And so I know. And nobody could really play like that, and he played the shit out of it. And I was like, oh my God. So me and him got together, and we found we found a singer who was sort of like Paul Di'Anno, we were into that. So we played like Rapchild, we covered Bonded by Blood, we covered a couple of Trouble songs. So we were kind of a cover band in the early days of Ravage. So we went from Oblivion to Ravage whenever Steve came with me. And then, so it was me, this guy named Mark Schwartzberg and Steve, and we were playing, and I had met Roger and he had a twin brother named Ronnie Patterson. And I used to sell newspapers door to door when I was like 12 and 13. And so did they. And they were in Bradenton, Florida, which is the town right next to ours. And so we both individually would win like Salesman of the Month competitions. And so we got invited to dinner together. So we met when we were really, really young. So fast forward to us playing a show at this place called Club Manatee. It was like a teen show. And we played without a bass player. I played guitar, Steve was playing, and then we had a singer. And Roger and Ronnie show up, and they're freaking out because we're playing songs that they knew that nobody else knew. And one thing led to another, and the next day he came over, and that's when we sort of got together. And then
now was Roger? You're saying Roger came over? Was he already at a level that you were like, whoa, this dude can play?
Not really. I mean, he definitely had good dexterity in his fingers, and he could play things that most bass players that we were used to seeing around town couldn't play because he could play that fast. So that was the most intriguing thing in the beginning. And
he was playing all fingers, right?
Yeah, all fingers, always. And so just we had never, it was just a weird thing to even have because we'd been playing for a little while without bass, and again we were playing a show out without bass, and then Ram was in a band. Then we got rid of Ram for a minute because he was just difficult. And got this other guy, Mark Schwartzberg, and we did the actual On They Slay demo with that dude. And
so we're talking 85 here?
Yeah, I think 85, 84, 85.
And you're out of high school, or you're still like a senior, or what?
I quit school already.
You quit.
Steve graduated. I quit in 10th grade. And school was not fun for me at all, man. My mom recognized that it was just.
I got you.
And I knew what I wanted to do, man. I knew I was like, at that point, I was gung ho on being in a band.
Right.
And, so that's kind of how we ended up with Ravage. And in the early days of that, like I said, we were still learning how to play. And so Roger was definitely better than myself, and probably equally as good as Rand. And Steve was kind of a shining light. he started taking jazz lessons and stuff like that, and really his progression happened a lot quicker than ours.
Hell of a drummer.
Yeah, it's great.
I mean, all you guys are, in Roger's case, were pretty incredible musicians by the time you got to, 88, 90. That's, and you're only, how old are you at that point? You're 20.
Well, we did our first record. Roger was really excited that he was still a teenager when he did his bass lines.
No shit.
A few days after that, he turned 20, but he was excited about being 19 and doing Piece of Time. So, yeah.
Kevin's asking, was Roger a Yes fan? Chris Squire, Geddy Lee? I would imagine yes.
100%. Oh yeah, 100%. Yeah, and the thing about Roger was great. He was just like, he loved Gene Simmons, he loved Lemmy, and he also loved the great bass players. And he was able to sort of combine all those things. But he just had so much attack when he played bass. It was just one of the greatest things about Roger Patterson that I still don't see from many of today's players. Like, a lot of people have a lot of fluid dexterity and a lot of finesse, but not fucking. If you can combine like attack with that kind of fluidity and dexterity, I think that's a great trait to have. And I'm sure there's many out there that do that. But
some of the videos
is you gotta, bass is meant to be hit like a piano. Like, you can play piano really pretty and emulate all the chords and play some nice stuff, and then you can be percussive. And Roger,
Jocko, was he a Jocko fan? Did he know about Jocko?
Yeah,
oh yeah, okay, yeah. So you guys are now are you playing out like at real gigs, or is it just like high school type things? Or
no, we had some friends that were in a punk rock band called the Belching Penguins, and they had a really great drummer as well, and they played very fast, and so we were kind of friends with them because they also were underground, and they were playing a lot of shows with DRI and COC and Agnostic Front and The Accused, and Roger really loved punk rock a lot, and so anyway, we were friends with those guys, and we would play shows with them. But we had long hair and we were wearing leather jackets, and punk rock was punk rock, and so that didn't work. And I remember playing in Miami with SNFU, and I thought we were going to die that night. There was a lot of segregation between punk rock and metal.
Oh yeah.
Before DRI fixed it.
Mm-hmm.
DRI was the one band that made that crossover record, and then all of a sudden there was like this
the bonding
between
yeah.
So, but before that bond happened, it wasn't fun, man. And literally, like, I remember some guy with a mohawk just standing right in front of us with his finger in the air, like the whole time we were playing, like.
And you're like, is this guy gonna stab me or what?
Like, if I don't like a band, I'll go to the bathroom and go get a drink. But the effort it takes to stand there with your finger in the air, So and I remember we made $75 that night, and I had to go find the club owner to get that $75 so that we had enough gas money to get home.
Okay.
And I ended up in this shady hotel office. This is Miami Beach in the mid '80s or something like that. Yeah, mid '80s. Super sketchy, and so we didn't have a lot of so we met a guy named Tony Rifugiato who had a promotional company called No Clubs Productions, and he was responsible for bringing a lot of, in the early days, he brought the Chili Peppers to town the first time, brought a lot of punk shows, and he also started bringing metal shows to town. So we became friends with him. I would sit in it. He had a record shop called Daddy Cool Records, and Daddy Cool Records and Tapes was a very important place for me because I would sit there. I didn't have a job, and I would sit there with him all day. And he had sort of industry trade magazines, and he would be turning me on to all this new music. And that was where I heard Battered Motorfinger for the first time. And he was always getting it. He would get advanced tapes before anybody else heard them. He would get them because he was a record store. So,
right.
So I was just there all the time, and I would get to hear music before it even came out, and I loved that. That was a thing to me, like.
Oh yeah,
I heard it before anybody.
Your little secret, man. Nobody knows this shit but me, right?
That was really cool. That really meant something to me, and so he eventually ended up managing Atheist when we became, in the early days, and before we even did a record, and so he brought Testament to town, and we got to play with Testament.
Nice.
Brought Death Angel and Forbidden to town, and we got to play with them, and so it was kind of cool. Like, he really was super helpful to helping us get signed and get to a level to where we.
You were Atheist at this point. You were not Ravage anymore, right? Okay.
Right.
So why did you change the name Ravage? Was there another Ravage out there that you found out about, or?
Yeah, and you know, leaning back into that separation of church and state between glam rock and underground, there was a band that sounded like Dokken that had the name Ravage, and we wanted no fucking part of being compared to Dokken. That was sinful. So we were like,
Oh man, you're hurting my heart because I love Docking, but go ahead.
listen, George Lynch is a friend of mine, man. Now that
Love
we're
that
older,
fucking
but
dude.
back then it was not a.
I got you.
Keeping it real, man. I'm
I
keeping it
got
real.
you. I got you.
But I have some really funny George Lynch stories too. So what was I saying?
You were talking about
So yeah, we changed the name. No, we changed the name.
Oh, name change, right?
And we made it an acronym because we didn't want to part with the name, but we thought, well, we'll make it an acronym. So we made it Raging Atheist Valley to Glory End. We just thought, yeah, that'll work.
That'll work.
Worst name ever.
Yeah, it's not great. I'm gonna be honest.
Fucking a 5-word name. But I mean, if you think about, As the River Turns and all the band names of today,
Sure.
they're like sentences.
Sure.
Fucking visionary, Jeff. I was visionary.
I got you. I got you.
No, we got rid of the acronym and I was like, atheist, fucking blah. And then, of course, everybody was like, oh, I don't know. I was like, yeah, I like that.
That's why I like it. Yeah.
I like that. That makes you nervous, and so that's where it began.
You know what's kind of mind blowing to me though? This is what year now? This is 86.
Yeah. So.
I'm shocked nobody had that name at that point. Maybe it was just because everybody was scared of it.
Yeah, I would imagine it was probably not. I mean, it's still difficult. I mean, that's why on our Facebook it says Atheist Band.
Yeah,
which irritates the shit out of me because it sounds like a country western. Like, hey, we're the Atheist Band. Like it sounds so fucking stupid. But I just wanted to say atheist. But if you type that into Google, you get a ton of religious bullshit.
You do. Yeah. What when do you do these the Rotting in Hell demos? Where, and how?
So terrible. We did them in our warehouse, and we did board recordings with horrible 6-track channel.
I was going to say, how many tracks? I was thinking 8 at most.
Rand Berkey was actually not in the band at the time, but he was still hanging out with us, and he actually engineered it. And oh god, it's so terrible, man. I think about that, and it's so stupid lyrically and everything. I mean, we were just kids and just trying to be scary and trying to be, that's what we thought it needed to be, and we quickly grew out of that and realized that, we want to play good music. So yeah, that's got to be. I think we did a couple demos. Like we did that.
You did what's it called? Not None Beyond, is it?
Yeah, well, Beyond right. Beyond demos when we first started kind of getting a little bit of attention.
Yeah, and they're way more polished. I mean, compared to that. But does it shock you that if I say the Rotting in Hell demos are not really that awful? There's some cool seeds of things in there. I hear some Maidenisms in there. I definitely hear you're singing on that, right?
Yeah.
And you're doing way more of a death metal growl. That was probably the growliest you ever got, I think. Like you had that. Was it because of the influence of the other bands that were going? The Barneses and the
No, not the Barneses. This is before that. So I would say I was really into like early Creator and Schmier from Destruction. Like those are two guys because I was never really like a super deep guy. Like I didn't like the really, really deep stuff. I wanted to I like that witchier sound. I thought it sounded more evil.
Mm-hmm.
And so I leaned more into Schmier from Destruction, which oddly looking back now wasn't more evil in any way. It was just, I don't know, but it just had an edgier sound to me. And maybe that's that old AC/DC, that Bon Scott thing.
You know
what I mean? Maybe thinking back about it now.
Yep.
So and I tried my hand at a little bit of deep, but it was never like anybody else's deep. So but then it wasn't until Nasty Savage was a really important band in our scene that never really gets talked about.
I'm sorry, who?
Nasty Savage.
Oh, Ronnie. Yeah.
So not vocally, but I mean, as a band,
as a band, right? Actually, I was going to ask you about that. Talk about them and Savatage, because those are two homegrown bands that, Savatage was probably, I would think, maybe at the time, they were probably the biggest band that came out of Tampa to that point, right?
Yeah, pound for pound, but they weren't the most liked, and from our world, from the underground world. Like, we could appreciate what they were doing, like I think they had a song or had a record, Sirens.
Sirens.
And so we we kind of acknowledged, we had a band from our hometown that practiced right by us called Crimson Glory, who were amazing. We went on to sign with Roadrunner and did a couple of records, and they were very much like Queensryche. So we were into Crimson Glory, which we felt was a better band than Sabotage. But
you see this? I was going to ask you about this.
There you go. There you go. Yeah, those are my homies, man.
Fucking amazing record, man.
Yeah, so those guys used to practice 3 doors down from us. So we used to listen to that shit and just put our head in our hands like, fuck, they're so good. They had a killer PA, and they sounded like Judas Priest, like rehearsing down the way. In the early days of Atheist, they were so confused by what we were doing. They were just like, what are you doing? And we were like, we're playing fast, and we kind of, we had a spirited competition between us. I worked at a restaurant with a bass player, Jeff Lords, who now we're great friends. Jeff. And, we just had a spirited competition because, again, I felt like they didn't understand what we were trying to do, but I understood what they were doing. I had a lot of respect. So anyway, they got signed to Atlantic and ended up going and playing a bunch of festivals in Europe. And so we kind of looked up to those guys and Nasty Savage as being guys that are taking it away from our hometown and taking it to the world. And Nasty Savage, more than anything, used to play these shows that everybody would go to. Every local band, which at that time was Executioner,
right? Oh yeah,
which was Angel, right? Deicide. Before they were Deicide, they were called Amon.
Right, Amon. Yeah.
And so all of us would be at the show, at the Nasty Savage show, and we were all kids.
And Nasty Savage was much more of a thrash band overall, right? They had a lot more thrashy vibes.
Oh yeah, and then and Ronnie's vocals were Ronnie's vocals, and
yeah, they were a trip. They're a trip.
But musically, they had a bass player called Dezo Bartha, who was probably one of the really big influence on Roger. He played with his fingers. He was really fucking amazing. And the thing that people never realize, like if you remove Ronnie's vocals and just listen to Nasty Savage music,
killer.
So good, man. The harmonies and the weird timing and all that, and we just fucking were drawn to that. And we would go see them play and come back to rehearsal, and it would be like filling up our gas tanks. And so they're owed a huge credit, and people find that weird all the time when I tell that story because we're so different musically. But
yeah, right.
But not really. I mean, there's a lot of harmony things that they do that we ended up doing because of that. And so they're owed because after that, they signed a Metal Blade or whatever, and then they weren't able to enjoy the same success as the really, really heavier bands did following that with Death and Morbid Angel and all that. So, but yeah, I love those guys, and I tell them every time I see them. David Austin's a good friend of mine I talk to all the time, and I just tell, because he in 2010 reached out to me about Jupiter. And,
okay.
And he's from Tennessee, so he was like, "Hey man," he's like, "I don't know, 1 minute and 3 seconds of this song, man, blew my fucking mind." He has that kind of accent, And I was like, "Holy shit, David Austin's fucking calling me right now." I remember music
nice.
Out because back in the day, we just really, those guys were kings to us, and to ever get their attention for anything. So it was really, really cool, even as an older musician at that point, that he acknowledged that.
That's cool.
I always wanted to be able to go back to Roger, somewhere, wherever he is, and be like, dude, Nasty Savage finally fucking acknowledged us,
Nice.
That shit matters, when you're young, and
it
matters to the world too, I mean, those guys were our heroes. So,
hell yeah, man.
So that's where it all started, and then Executioner would open for Nasty Savage, Massacre would open for Nasty Savage.
Yeah, Monstrosity.
Monstrosity, I don't think was a thing yet.
They weren't around. Okay.
Not yet. This is real early shit. There was a thing called there was a big early festival in the mid '80s at this place called Rocky Point Beach Resort, and it had Massacre, Sabotage, Morbid Angel, my friends in Havoc that came from our town that were inspired by, and can't think of some of the other bands that were out there, but that was and they took over this hotel, and in the courtyard set up a stage and had the music, and it was just cool. All the metalheads rented the hotel rooms, and it was a pivotal event in our scene.
Massive party.
It led to people going to more sound. And one thing leading to another, and those records, getting global attention, and Scott Burns, Jim and Tom Morris.
I want to get to that in a sec. Let me I'm going to ask you something, and you can say I'm going to pass on this question. You brought up Crimson Glory. I know John Drenning had some issues. Did you know him?
Oh yeah, very well.
Are you friends with
No,
him, or
oh yeah,
is he everything cool there?
absolutely. He had a small rough patch, but he's a great
Yeah.
dad.
Okay.
He's a really good dad. Takes really good care of his kid, and
Killer fucking guitar player.
absolutely. I'll say this about John. I love you, John. I know you're going to watch this, buddy, but John's never been shy about his belief in himself. You know,
Okay.
and that's okay. You know what I mean? He's a very confident guy to the point where he, sometimes probably was annoying to people, but he always backed it up. He was a badass guitar player.
Oh yeah.
From way back, and
all those guys in that band, fucking smoking musicians. And let's just throw it out there: Midnight, one of the greatest singers ever. Very sad what happened with him.
Last time I saw him before he died was at my 40th birthday party. He came to my 40th birthday and died not too long after that, I think. So he was, he just wine, man. He was really into wine. He drank a lot of wine, and it really just crushed his liver. But man, I'll never forget, like when we were in the very early days of Atheist, he came down. Like I said, we practiced in the same complex, and he came down and did Flight of Icarus with us. And I'll never forget the feeling of playing Flight of Icarus while he was singing it. So it was like playing with Dickinson, It was like, oh God, man, he was like the real deal, like in terms of singers. We were shocked at how great of a singer he was, and it was just weird too. That was the first time I'd ever played music with somebody that
amazing.
Yeah, I was like, holy shit, that's what a real singer sounds like.
Yeah.
He was great.
Let's see. We all got through the name change. Tell me about the process of getting the material together that got you your first deal. Can you go into that a little bit about how you got signed and then the record company failed? And can you give me a little anything new on that or anything detailed on that?
So once we did that Riding in Hell demo, was terrible. I was, like I said, I was hanging at that record store with Tony Refugiato and Daddy Cool Records, and he would get these one sheets from record companies about records. And so he got one from about Possessed from Combat. And at the bottom of that sheet, I stole the sheet from the record store and had Don K's number and name on it. Do you know who Don K is?
Oh yeah.
He was a writer back in the day, and so I saw his phone number and I thought, an address. So I sent one of those demos to him, and then I called him. Mind you, in retrospect, I look back on it and think he must have just thought, oh, how terrible. But to his credit, he took my phone call and said, yeah, I got your demo and it's not very good. He's like, but I have, there's something weird about it. So I have this friend named Boy Kryn.
That's what I wanted to get to. Cool.
I'll send it to him and we'll see what he thinks. And so he really liked Steve Flynn a lot. And he knew that we were kind of doing something weird. There was something kind of different about what we were doing. And so he befriended us. And he was one of the toughest critics that I still to this day have ever subjected myself to, that I respect.
Right.
He was never a musician, but he somehow had this super sharp, keen ear to what was good and what wasn't. And really fed people like Monty Connor bands at Roadrunner. I mean, he was really instrumental. He's kind of this unsung hero of the underground,
of course,
early days of underground. And he got a job at a place called Three Cherries Records that had Lena Horne, like this old soulful, Lena Horne.
Yeah, I remember her. Yeah.
And they didn't, they started a subsidiary label called Mean Machine Records. And Bory Boy ran it, and so he got us a budget of $7,200 to do Piece of Time. And but before that, we had so when we met Bory, he was like, yeah, I don't know, do another demo and then send me the song. So that's when we did the On They Slay demo, and that had
right.
Brain Damage, On They Slay, and Undefiled Wisdom, I think was the third song. And he reached out to me one day and he's like, I'm going to put together this compilation record called Raging Death. And I can't give you any money for it, but we'll put 2 songs from the demo on it and I'll make 2,000 copies and your demo will get good distribution. And we were like, man, cool.
Do it.
Back then I was, very pre-internet, and that was a big deal to get 2,000 people to listen to your demo. So it had Executioner, Future Obituary, Sadist.
Sadist. Oh shit.
We were still Ravage at that point.
Okay.
That was the very end of our Ravage days. And a band called Betrayal. And I can't remember the name of the other band, but the only bands that got signed from it were Sadist, Obituary, or Executioner, and us. And so that happened, and then he got that job, and out of those bands, he decided to sign us. And so Piece of Time was done like, well before it came out. We had a lot
Right,
of
knew
problems.
that. Yeah.
A lot of
87, you said,
Yeah,
right?
7, yeah, and it didn't see the light of day in America, I think, till '89. So when people start talking about sort of technicality in music, songs like "Piece of Time" and "I Deny" were done well before anybody was sort of entertaining technicality and
Right.
music. So in our music, so yeah, we owe a lot to him for taking the chance and doing that, and we signed a deal. And our first tour that we had nobody, that there was no one like us, so it was really hard to find bands for us to tour with. So,
Yeah.
so put us out with Candlemass, which
That's
was
bizarre. That's a bizarre pairing. I love Candlemass, but
I
seeing
did too. I love him.
that's just bizarre.
I talked to Messiah today on Facebook. It was his birthday yesterday.
Did you?
Happy birthday, Messiah. Yeah, but they couldn't have been nicer to us, and they were the very reason that we even got the tour. They paid for the bus and everything.
Are
And
we
I don't know.
talking are we talking Nightfall or Ancient Times around then? Probably
Uh,
Nightfall, maybe.
Nightfall, I think. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I was already like a fan, and I was just like shocked that we were going to be able
Yeah.
to go on tour with them. But I wasn't thinking about the dynamic of what the fans would be like, because I was just used to people being confused by us anyway. And so I didn't know really who we could tour with at that time that would make any sense. So to me, I knew people knew who Candlemass was. So we went to Sweden and played our very first shows, and that was a big shock for us to be essentially dropped off at a youth hostel place with 4 bunk beds, no television, no money, freezing cold, Florida boys. They dropped us off at about 4 in the afternoon and didn't pick us up until the next day about 3 in the afternoon. So we just sat in this room with no money. Like, all right, what are we gonna do? A few days before
Smoking
Christmas,
cigarettes.
what cigarettes we had?
No, right.
First of all, cigarettes in Sweden at that point we weren't smart enough to bring our American cigarettes with us.
Right.
And then we realized how much. I mean, back then, cigarettes were over $5 a pack, American.
Over there. No shit.
Yeah, so we were like, everything was very expensive over there. So some guy named S. Bjorn shows up to pick us up in this little tiny car. We all pile in it. He drives crazy, sliding all over the place. Again, we're from Florida. We don't know shit about snow. And we go and play some shows. We played with Morgoth, and then we played, I think, a show with. Well, what's interesting is those shows ended up being in the crowd at those shows were all the guys from At the Gates, all the guys from Entombed. All the what would become the Swedish death metal fucking elite.
Yeah, Liam Flames, and
we kind of came to their hometowns, and they were just like, whoa. I remember sitting back stage with LG. This is 1980, I think maybe 88 or 89, and I had these. You ever seen Napoleon Dynamite?
Oh, fuck yeah, yeah.
So he wears those boots, those black boots. So because we were from Florida, we knew we were going to Sweden. Like, I was like, well, I'm going to get some ski boots. I'm a fucking idiot. And so I get these black boots, and I have them on, and I'm sitting backstage about to go on stage, and LG's sitting next to me, and he goes, are you going to wear those shoes on stage? And I was like, yeah. And we never looked the part. Like they looked very metal. We didn't look very metal at all.
Yeah.
So I wore those stupid ass fucking shoes on stage, and but I guess I'm told years later, like I've talked to Tomas and the guys in At the Gates, and I've talked to LG about things, and in the years that followed that, I saw a lot of love for the music that we did, and I guess, and I think about it the same way I think about bands that came to town in my small town. For the first time, you see a band like Creator, and you go, oh my God, and they come to your town, and it's like, there's a lot of people that were friends that you went to high school with that didn't know anything about it, and really kind of has an effect on a town. And so, and I think back of all those guys being there when we played, and we were just 2 left-handed guitar players with a crazy drummer and a sick bass player. They were just like, holy shit. And the guys in Entombed, actually, there's a story that if you look it up, they wanted to recreate the Ravage guitar sound. So they worked with a pedal company. You can Google this too. And they worked with a pedal company and created this pedal that supposedly had the Ravage guitar sound, which is an early template of the Swedish guitar sound.
The HM2?
I think you might be right.
Yeah, HM2, right?
And that
How
came
about that?
from.
Oh,
I mean,
Nick is gonna shit when he sees this. He would have liked to have been in here. I'm gonna bring him in soon. But is that the fest? You were at a festival, right?
yeah. We
So
played in.
was Forbidden there?
No, no,
Okay,
no, no, no.
okay.
It was Morgoth. I feel like Entombed played as well because LG was there. I'm pretty sure it was Entombed and Morgoth and Atheist and Candlemass, I think. And then we played in Malmö, Sweden, Fagersta, and Stockholm. So it's been 30 plus years, so it's hard for me to remember exactly. But I guess that in that 3 show span, pretty much all the early Swedish now legends were all in the audience at those shows, and they were just like freaked out by us, and it was really outside the bounds of this is their words. They tell me over the years,
Right.
And I was just like, that's cool, because I also had that experience with other bands, and so it's interesting when you get to hear. That's one of my favorite things about touring is hearing how, people will come up and be like, man, when I was 15, like, so I was having a conversation in Norway. We played this festival, and for like an hour, I'm talking to this guy, and he's drinking wine, and he has a suit on, and he's explaining to me how he kicked heroin with 2 CDs or 2 cassette. He had Obituary Cause of Death, and he had Atheist Piece of Time, and he needed to kick heroin, so he went out into the woods of Sweden and or Norway, I'm sorry, and with only that music, and I forget how many days it was. So fast forward to the end of the story, I'm like, do you play music? And he's like, yeah, I have a band. And I was like, what's the name of the band? It was Turbo Negro.
Oh yeah. That dude.
Turbo Negro, man.
Is that the guy that just died?
Yeah, exactly.
Oh yeah.
And they were fucking an institution over there. They were so big. I was like, holy shit, man. He was so humble that it took him an hour before he finally dropped his band. I had to ask him, like, do you play music? Because he didn't look like he played music. I had just seen them open for Queens of the Stone Age.
No shit.
Just before I met him. So it's just so cool. Music is this thing that you never know who's listening.
Connective tissue, man. It's
talking about George Lynch. When Neurotica first went on tour for the very first time, we did our sound check in Cincinnati, Ohio, which is my old hometown. And my father shows up for the first time to see me play, and we're opening for George Lynch Mob.
Oh yeah. Was that when Oni was with him?
It was like the hip hop Lynch Mob.
Oh,
you remember that era?
Yes, I do. Smoke This, or what was it called? Yeah. Something like that. Oh man.
But we didn't know it at the time. We just thought whatever.
Those first two Lynch Mob albums crush. After that, it gets a bit dicey. I have 2 George Lynch stories really quick. I've met George twice. The first time he was opening, Lynch Mob was opening for Yngwie of all things, and it was Krispy Kreme Yngwie, the big, larger Yngwie, if you get what I mean.
Oh, yeah.
And when Yngwie was on, George came out in the audience, and I saw him sitting there, and like nobody's talking to him, so I walked up to him because I love Dokken and I love George's playing, man, especially those up through back for the attack. And I just started talking to him, and we just sat there making fun of Yngwie the whole time. Super cool. But the second time I met him, Kelly, he was doing a clinic down in Baltimore. We all went in, and he did, he was playing live with a jam track thing or whatever. He played, and then he was signing afterwards. And I know people very well that are very good friends with George and his wife. Like, they're good friends of mine in LA, right? And I walked up, and I'm like, there was 3 dudes in front of me, and they started talking to George about his Mr. Scary guitars, right? Because he builds guitars.
Yeah.
And he's talking to him and all. And next thing I know, they're taking pictures, and I get to my thing to get my thing signed. I'm like, hey, George, I'm good friends with Gene Carpenter, or I forgot his last name, damn it. Gene Carpenter and Ann. And he's like, oh, yeah, I know them. I said, hey, can I get a picture real quick? He's like, no, man, if I do it for you, I got to do it for everybody. And I'm like, dude, you just took a picture like right in front of me, bro. Oh, I get it. I'm not going to buy a $7,000 guitar, so I don't qualify. But so that's my George Lynch story. Everybody knows is like, he's going to tell his George Lynch story again.
Well, let me tell you something about your George Lynch story there, because this always happens, and I tell fans of music all the time that I'll see somebody say, yeah, I asked that guy that guy's a dick, and I'll be like, why is he a dick? Well, I don't know, man. He was coming off stage, and I asked him for a pick, and he just ignored me. I'm like, well, fucking understand something.
Yeah.
Like you don't know, or they catch somebody out in the hotel after they're on the phone, or
they're at dinner, or they're at, yeah.
You don't know, like they're human beings as well. You don't know that they didn't just get off the phone with their wife and wife's mad at them, or the kids, or something happened to their kids. You don't know what headspace they're in.
Exactly.
They can't always be on. But George Lynch is like, well, I'm not saying it to you particularly, but fans immediately will tell the story for 25 years after the event of the time that Eddie Van Halen didn't give me a pick. That fucking asshole. Why is he an asshole? Because he didn't give you a pick? Yeah, I fucking asked him for a pick. You don't know this. When did you ask him? Was he, what was the scenario? And a lot of times it's always like, well, I don't know. He was in the parking lot on the phone, and I just went over to him and said, hey, bro, can I get a pick? Like,
yeah, it's like,
it happened to me recently on the road in Suffolk. I was on the street talking to my wife something really important about my son, and this guy just comes over and starts talking to me. I'm like, I'm on the phone.
Yeah.
And like, this isn't, we're not even in showtime. It's in the afternoon outside the club. And later on, I saw that guy. He goes, I'm sorry, man. I realized what a dick I was. Like, I didn't know what, I interrupted exactly what you're doing. I was like, it's cool. Thank you for acknowledging, because it is that way. And never, and it's real important to me to never be a dick like that to anybody. I try super hard to always take pictures and shake hands, because it matters to me. Because I always tell people, the only reason I get to go on tour is because you bought a ticket.
Yeah.
It's the only reason I get to go.
Well, I mean, dude, that's what I'm saying. I was at that clinic because I paid to get into that clinic, and all I was looking for was one picture. And I did preface it. I said he was very cool the first time, so it's a wash with me and George right now. We're kind of like this.
So when we had a song called Easy Speak with Neurotica on the radio, and it was on like 85 stations, and so when we did our sound check that day, George Lynch came out to me, and I never met him before. And he goes, I've been looking for you everywhere. That's exactly what he said to me. And I was like,
me?
What? And again, in my mind, I'm still a death metal kid.
Yeah, right.
So again, you mistaken me for somebody else. He's like, yeah. Hey, I feel down. Easy Speak, right? I was like, fucking. And to me, it was new being on the radio, like that exposure that when you have a song on 85 stations in the country, anybody could fucking hear it, So I was just blown away by that, and he, me and him became friends, and we wrote 2 songs together.
No shit.
So when I got home, he wanted me to be the singer in his new band, and he wanted me to move to California to live at his house and record this record.
Right.
And at that time, Neurotica was like really kind of picking up steam, and so I reached out to my manager, and I was like, hey, George Lynch wants me to come live with him in California and write a record. He's like, you can't do it. And then our lawyer at the time also said, yeah, you can't make a record with him, because if you sign a deal with somebody else, they're going to want everything you're involved in, and George isn't going to give up that music, and they're not going to want to sign you if they can't have everything you do. And I was like, really? I got to tell George Lynch no? I got to tell him, and I had to call him and tell him no. And so that sucked, because I thought, he was amazing. He was such a nice man. When we were on tour together, he was like super buff at that point, like really in shape, and he would go to the gym every day. And he had a really healthy rider of food, and we were broke. We were in an RV, and we didn't have a lot of money. And whatever was left over from the food that he didn't eat, he would literally knock on our RV door and hand us a garbage bag full of like tuna noodles, and just a sweet man, really, really cool. And we were kind of getting the best of them on that tour, because people did not want to hear that lynch mob. People were not into hip hop lynch mob. So we would play, and then we would go to our little merch booth and sell T-shirts, and we would sit and watch people just walk out like, what the fuck was that? They did like different versions of Wicked Sensation and I think or whatever those songs were, the classic old Cody Logan songs, but they would do them in a hip hop way, and it was just super weird. And George knew it. He knew that this isn't going to work. But so
was that the one that he had that Mandy Lion with him?
What's that?
Mandy Lion, the singer, Mandy Lion.
I don't remember that being his name, but he was this hip hop guy. He was like,
it was okay. There was one after that he did with Mandy Lion, that dude in LA with the big poof. He's kind of like Jim Gillette, looked like Jim Gillette back in the day.
No, this guy was bald.
Hey, Hacks Process says, saw Atheist back in Jacksonville back in June. I was the kid going nuts in the front. I'm sure he knows who that is. You guys are so insanely good. Pisses me off that Atheist was overlooked back in the day. Metal done correct. Very good, Hacks Process. Haven't seen you in a while. Good to see you around, dude.
I remember that Jacksonville show, man.
Kelly, if you don't mind, do you mind me bringing Nick on? Okay, Nick, the Cleveland Browns suck. That was my cue to get him on. So, I was going to say it, but since I already talked to you about having him on, he'll be on in a minute. Let's dip into this question here. How you doing on time? We're at an hour and a half. You good?
I'm good. Yeah, I've got a wife's Christmas party a little later, about 10:30. But so I'm good.
Okay.
I'm good for now.
So how much time do we have?
Yeah, we'll go. We'll be
Okay.
good.
I want to jump into this a little bit because I know you have some very definitive, open, honest, transparent thoughts on this. And we're about to get into Atheist with the next phase. So, what was the Tampa death metal scene like back when you were you guys all friends with each other? Were you all aware of each other? I know there was some issues with Chuck. I don't know how deep you want to get into those, or I know you might want to save those for the book you said.
Did I say that? I don't.
You did in one interview. How intense was the rivalry between all of these bands? We're talking we're talking Obituary, Death, Cynic, Monstrosity, Morbid Angel, Deicide, all those bands. Can you kind of give me a sense of what was going on? Kind of like the LA scene in the 80s. What was happening there?
Well, I think that, by default, you have this scenario where there's one girl that everybody likes, and that girl would be the record company. And so everybody whips out their dick and goes, which dick do you like the best? You know what I mean? So it becomes this thing where it's not really, it's an odd analogy, I know, but I'm just saying that's kind of how it is. It wasn't that we didn't like each other. We all liked each other, but we all were doing something kind of different. That was the great thing about Tampa, is you had Obituary, Morbid, Deicide, Death, Atheist, Cynic, Monstrosity, Malevolent Creation, this fucking, I mean, that's a lot of, and I'm missing some, I know, and I apologize, guys. Massacre. Nocturnus.
Nocturnus, right? There you go.
Endless list of bands, and were all specifically different. There were none of the bands sounded the same. That's one of the reasons why Scott Burns was so, into producing and got into, his gig at Morrisound and all that. So yeah, we very much knew about each other. We all, of course, everybody wants to be king, but not in a bad way. I think we all had respect for each other. I think if anything, if you were to ask other bands, they just felt like we were definitely an outcast among an outcast scene. So,
you and Cynic were definitely on the orbit on the outside of the weirdness sphere. Right. You know what I mean?
We were alone on that street corner for a couple of years before Cynic. What a lot of people don't realize. Right. So it wasn't until right before we did Unquestionable that we actually met Cynic, and I went in and we did the Cruel Gentility demo, and I turned them on to Roadrunner and Monty Connor, and I was like, this band's fucking amazing. The drummer's ridiculous, and Monty swears he doesn't remember this, but he called me and he was like, I don't know what you just played me. I don't remember anything I just heard. I was like, are you sure you got the right thing? We just did this demo with Scott. It's fucking amazing. And he was like, it was too technical, and it was true. Like Cynic was, when I met them, Steve was leaving the band to go to college. And so I was looking for another drummer. So I was with Lee Harrison from Monstrosity, and he's one that introduced me to Cynic for the first time. And I remember sitting there watching him play for 8 people. And they were just blowing my fucking mind. I couldn't believe how great they were, because it was like finding somebody else that has the same spots as you. You're like, and then when we started talking, and I saw their influences were even deeper than ours, in terms of jazz and all that. And so it's just really, really cool to find a kindred spirit in a band, because we were still at that point struggling to get people to appreciate what we were trying to do. We felt like musicianship was like a really important part of the longevity of this music. And people in magazines would ask all the time, like, how does it survive? And I'm like, you gotta learn how to play. Just like anything, you can't just, have this out of tune knuckle dragging mentality, where it's just, the scare factor doesn't hold weight. It's not sustainable. So you can write all the bloody lyrics you want and all that, but at some point, Cannibal Corpse is a great example of that. Early Cannibal Corpse was the shock factor was the big thing, but Alex Webster learned how to fucking play the bass.
And Paul Mazurkowitz can play his ass off, and Jack Owen, and
they got Corpse in the band, who was just one of the greatest singers in the game, and now you have a different Cannibal Corpse. You know what I mean? You have a band that their musicianship rose to the level of the gore and the lyrics and everything, and the rest is history. They're selling out shows every time they play.
You really made a good point there. If you look back at all of those bands, Death, Cynic, you guys, Cannibal, Nocturnus, every Morbid, the whole, all of them, every fucking one of those bands had killer fucking players. Like everybody was, for the most part, every one of those guys was stellar at what they at their craft. But there was a lot of differentiation. You guys were really way out here, and Cynic was way over here with their more jazzy, free flowing sort of thing. And then Cannibal had their thing. I mean, and Death had their thing. And I know the thing. I'm trying to get to a point here. I'm ADDing a little bit with regards to you and Death, with atheist and Death. I know one of the things that does rub you the wrong way a little bit is when people say, well, you know, Chuck and Death, they were the first technical death metal band, and they really didn't get technical until, you could say, a tiny little bit on spiritual, but they really started to do it on human for the most part.
Yeah, human.
I mean, I think there was a little bit of progressiveness in the spiritual healing part of it, like half of the album, but
the difference is in the drummers, man. I mean, at the end of the day, that was the common denominator in being a different level. You had all those bands that had great guitar players or a good bass player, but the drums, the difference between Bill Andrews,
yes,
and fucking Steve Flynn,
massive.
Is third grade to fucking third year college.
Right.
And I'm sorry, and that's no disrespect. That's just the fucking way it is.
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
In terms of mechanical playing, it is that way. And so, you know, me and Chuck had an argument in the lobby of Morrisound Studios because he was trying to keep us from being signed because he was friends with Bory Boy. They used to be roommates. And at the early days when we were first getting signed, he told Bory, he was like, don't sign that band. They sound like shit. We played with them in Tampa, and Chuck was always threatened by anything that was different. Anything that was, you know, what he felt was false metal. And he was a very complicated guy. And, you know, and it's always odd to talk about somebody who's not living anymore. But there's you know,
the documentary lays it out pretty cleanly.
There's an illusion of how people are after they die, where they seem untouchable. But if you actually dig into the story of things, you know, he was a very complicated guy, and I'm trying to be kind about it. But
sure.
In that afternoon that we, you know, where I was leaving the studio, and he was like, dude, I mean, I heard you've been talking shit, you know, and that's how he talked. And I was like, I just stopped to turn around. I was like, I've been talking shit? I said, dude, you're trying to keep our band from being signed. We're trying to do, dude, I mean, you guys don't even listen to metal. You guys are false metal. You listen to jazz. And I was like, what are you talking about? I was like, we have a lot of influences. I said, you have a fucking bass player that plays with one finger, and you have a drummer that cheats. He doesn't even double time the hi-hat, which was a big deal to us. And so we had this big argument in Morrisound about that. And that's how our relationship started. And then from that point forward, he every chance he got, he would talk shit about us. And we were like, you're already signed, and you're already Chuck and Death, and you're already,
you're above us already. Yeah.
We're just trying to do what we do and get out there, and could never understand why he would, you know, and he was so against progressive metal until he
started doing progressive metal.
And he wasn't. Yeah, when he got Paul and Sean in the band, and he realized, oh shit, this takes it to a different level.
And then he got Gene Hogland, and, you know, I mean, yeah, that's so. I want to make it clear, we're not talking shit on Chuck. Chuck's a legend. There's no way of avoiding that. Chuck is a legend. I feel that way. I think you're a legend too. And it probably feels weird hearing somebody say that to you,
absolutely.
but it probably sounds pretty cool at the same time. So,
no, it's
but I mean, let me pull this guy in here. This guy here.
Hey, how's it going, dude? Pleasure fucking meeting you, man.
Pleasure to meet you as well.
Dude, been a fucking fan for God, man. Actually, this is where I started in terms of you. I didn't realize that you were in this, and then when I got an Atheist, and was like, wait a minute, you know, I like to look at the notes.
How old are you?
I'm 44. I got into
Neurotica. You were only like 20 or something when that came out, right?
Yep, that was at
2002.
Yep. Yeah, you guys played. I think you guys played the main stage, like opened the main stage in Columbus.
And so everybody had to play. It was like a 9:30 to 4 o'clock schedule on the second stage, and so we started the entire tour. We were the very first band to play on the very first show at 9:30 in the fucking morning. You get 20 minutes, and then the next day you play at 9:50, and the next day you play 10:10, and so everybody had to revolve. Like Chevelle was on the tour, Soil, us, and then it always was the headliner was Down with Phil and Phil and Pepper Keenan. And so that was a fucking amazing summer. It was really cool.
I want to say, like, do like some sort of scheduling thing. I want to say you guys were on the main stage.
Oh, okay. So yeah,
in Columbus,
Ozzy,
like you opened up the main stage, but the second stage was still going.
Yes. So Ozzy, obviously Sharon had cancer that year, and so that's a the weird story because we were all so excited. We're like, we signed with the WWE and this big thing, and Vince McMahon, and our music's on television, and all of a sudden we're going on Ozfest, and all this shit is great. And then the day, I want to say the day before, or 2 days before, we're supposed to meet our bus. I'm watching with my girlfriend in bed, and across the bottom of CNN it says Sharon Osbourne has cancer, and all of a sudden the tour was canceled. We were like, oh my god! I mean, it was catastrophic, but it wasn't canceled. So we ended up, getting out on the road, and there was Ozzy was flying home every night, and I guess Sharon had she had a real bad week, and so he canceled a couple shows, and System of a Down ended up being the headliner. And so one morning we woke up on our bus, and there was a note that said, "You've been moved to the main stage." I think 5:30 was the time slot, and we were like, "Holy shit!" It was I think Columbus and Kansas. I think we got to do 2 shows, and it's not like everybody got to do it. I don't know how we ended up getting that. It might have had something to do with the WWE because they actually sponsored the tour as well.
Yeah,
but we were like, to be honest, it wasn't as much fun. It was prestigious and cool because there was such a like the idea of playing on that PA system was the largest PA system I've ever sang through in my life. And I'm looking back at these little tiny people way back on the lawn, and singing. It was just this wall that I grew up as a kid seeing speakers like, wow, what must it be like to sing in that microphone and feel that sound of that coming out, or be a drummer and hit the kick drum when it's like, that wall of sound. So on that level, it was really cool. But all the seats were in front of us, and nobody gave a fuck. You know what I mean? It was like really second stage was much more fun. People were engaged and close. Yeah. It was cool.
Dude, the second stage was definitely the party. But yeah, that was where I first saw you, and I remember I was like, wait, this band's on a WWE label? Like, I didn't even know.
We did a Beatles cover on that tour.
Yeah.
So I Am the Walrus, and we were excited because Rolling Stone wrote about it. Like, get there early and see this band play because they do a great cover of the Beatles, and we got actually what's that guy's name? Matt Pinfield.
Yeah. 120 minutes.
Yeah, and Thomas Pannunzio, who did the classic Kiss live records, did Bruce Springsteen, did all these great live records. When they were doing the Ozfest live record, they did 2 days in Boston, and when we did I Am the Walrus, Thomas Pannunzio and Matt Pinfield came backstage to catering to find us, to tell us that they wanted, like, they were making this Ozfest record, and it didn't include any of the second stage bands. It was only the main stage bands, and they wanted to go to Ozzy and tell Ozzy, this song needs to be on that live record, because Ozzy was the reason we did it anyway. It was when I wanted to do a cover, they were like, "Oh, you want to do a Sabbath song?" I was like, "Fuck no, we don't want to do a Sabbath song. Let's do a Beatles song. That's Ozzy's favorite band. He loves the Beatles." And so and it ended up being a really great decision. And we did like a heavy version of I Am the Walrus. That it was funny to look out at the crowd while we were playing it, and there was a lot of young people that weren't alive when the song was written that recognized that song from somewhere. Like their dad or mom had played it for them at some point. But this was like this heavy version, and they were like, "Oh man," and so it worked out. We only had 20 minminutes, so to play a cover was a risk, to begin with. You only get 4 songs.
Yeah.
You want to.
My mom was actually at that Ozfest with me. She wanted to, because at that point she expressed a lot of curiosity about what I was listening to.
Oh yeah.
And yeah, she was like, "Well, I used to go to shows all the time." Like, she saw Yes and fucking Hawkwind and tons of fucking killer shit, and she really enjoyed Ozfest. She had a fucking blast, and I want to say she recognized this, like, "Oh, I know that's my song. That's a song from my generation." I was like, "Well, that is cool. I know it too because you played it for me."
Well, let me pull this back into the interview portion here. I'm sorry to interrupt, but I do want to be conscious of Kelly's time. I don't want to run out here. So you guys recorded Piece of Time in '87, but due to that record label stuff that went down, it didn't come out until '90. Can you tell me what went down? Did you tell me what went down there? Did you finish that as far as the metal? What was the metal? What was it called? The Mean Metal?
Mean Machine Records.
Mean Machine Records.
Yeah, so Mean Machine was the initial label that gave us the money to do Piece of Time. And then there were two labels, Roadrunner and Active Records was this European label that was owned by two guys that were the editors for a magazine called Metal Forces, which was a really popular, important European metal magazine back in the late 80s, early 90s. And we had to make a decision. We felt like everybody was getting signed by Roadrunner. We would end up being, 10th in line for attention and all that. So we made the executive decision of going with Active Records, which is a mistake because they while they did have the ears of the metal listener, they didn't have the infrastructure and the distribution network that Roadrunner had in order to be, because you can't buy a record if you can't find it. And that was a big deal back in the day, was distribution. So you can be on a cool label and everything, but if the records are in the shops, you're not going to get it. So we went with them, and that ended up being a mistake. And nobody, we could never get an American deal, and so nobody in our home country could find a record. They had to buy it import, and it was very expensive. And obviously, it didn't help our cause a lot. So it wasn't until Metal Blade.
Well, then Brian Slagle jumped in, right?
Yeah, Brian Slagle, and the legendary, amazing man of metal.
Did they license it from? They licensed it from Active, or did they get? How's that work? Well, how's that work?
Yeah, they license it for America, and they pay licensing fees to that that owns it. And so at the time, when that happened, we did it. And then when it came time to do Unquestionable, Metal Blade had upped their ante with distribution through Warner Brothers. So that was a big fucking deal to be an extreme metal and have that kind of distribution was a big deal. So when we went to negotiate that, they created a subsidiary label called Death Records. And to me, at the time, again, I was just like, death with everything is death, and the morbid, and we're not coming from there. I'm writing songs about other things. Like I was very anti. I didn't want to be lumped into that gore and blood, guts, and knuckle dragging shit. I was like, how to move forward, And so if we're on a label that's called Death Records, that's going to be a fucking problem. And so I was like, we want to be on Warner Brothers. And I remember being on the phone with them, and I stomped my feet and we got it rolling. We got distribution through Warner. It was still called Death Records, but it was distribution through Warner, and it worked out great. And we finally got everything out, and Unquestionable came out, and but still, it was like, who do we tour with? I
was just going to ask that. What kind of touring did you do off of Piece of Time? Anything significant?
Yeah, just Candlemass, and then
just that Candlemass thing. Okay.
Yeah, and then Roger died, and so then we had to, work Tony Troy in from Cynic, and so when that happened, it was 8 weeks before we were scheduled to go in the studio to record Unquestionable.
Oh.
And all those bass lines were already written, so Tony had to learn them from the demos that we had done with Scott Burns, and so then we went and did that record, and then we're in the studio doing that, and Pestilence is in the studio at the same time as us, and we're 8 weeks out of losing my best friend. And really
can I interrupt for 1 second, Kelly? Relative to Roger, I lost a good friend in my 20s too. He hit a telephone pole, hit black ice, and I got the call from his girlfriend the morning it happened. So I know that was a tough couple days, couple weeks, really, couple months. Roger was a good friend of yours. How did that affect you professionally and personally? I mean, can you go into that, or is that not?
It's been 30 plus years, and I still think about him all the time. Every single time I'm on stage, I think about that guy. He was my roommate, so we were super close, and and he was difficult, if not impossible, at that time to find somebody that played bass like that in extreme metal. There just wasn't any guys that played like that, and we went to Doug Kaiser from Watchtower, and he just felt.
Right.
And because that was Roger, he had just came to see us play in Texas, and Roger would have loved that, to have Doug play his bass lines. And then Tony Troy was the next obvious choice because we were friends with Cynic at that point. So, and those guys came to Roger's funeral, and we were already really good friends at that time. And yeah, I mean, it's just as catastrophic as it could be. I mean, it was just, it wasn't, we weren't Metallica, but it meant the same to us when they lost Cliff as when we lost Roger. Right. It was just a really important part of our band, and it was tough to just jump back in, and all of a sudden we're in the studio doing Unquestionable Presence. And then
is it tough when you see YouTube videos of him and things like that, or and I
No.
imagine I imagine you probably have home video of that kind of
Oh
stuff
yeah.
too. Like,
No,
yeah.
it's I wish there was more. I
Okay.
only wish that there was more where I could hear him speak more, and like
Yeah.
hear his voice and everything, because he
Yeah.
had a very specific voice, and because videos weren't, it was 1991. To have a video camera back then was this
Yeah,
big
it was that giant VHS thing or whatever. Yeah, right.
but there's some videos that we included on some reissues from our time when we were doing Piece of Time. If those CDs are available, they came out on Season of Mist, and they've got 88 minutes of video footage from each album. And so that Piece of Time record that we videotaped while we were in Morristown, while everybody was tracking, and there's a lot of really funny shit on there.
I gotta get that. I gotta get
Yeah,
that.
you got to get it because you can hear his voice and you can hear how he was, and because you see someone's picture for decades and you don't, and all of a sudden you put a voice to it, and it's kind of different than so we with that in mind, to give you the
You're in the
context,
studio and Pestilence is there, and
the context of overcoming losing him, finding somebody that was capable of playing Roger's bass lines, being excited about it. Patrick Mameli and Pestilence are in the studio at the same time as us. We're staying at the same motel, and he comes by and hears the demos, and it, clearly, Unquestionable Presence, even the demos were different than anything that had been done.
yeah.
Nothing, and he heard that, and the bass especially, and went and fired his bass player immediately. Went back to the studio, fired the bass player, sent him home, and hired Tony Choi. And they had more money than we had at that time, and so Tony went, and so that's why I've always taken issue with not Pestilence, but Patrick Mameli, in the sense that he didn't have any empathy at all about what we had just gone through. He just knew that he had.
How'd you manage to pull Tony away from Cynic, though?
I didn't pull him away.
Okay, well, I didn't know how to phrase it.
I always respected the fact that he was with Cynic, and their relationship dissolved on its own. It was never because of us. So, but Tony, went and moved to Holland with Pestilence and ended up doing that. So that's when we got Darren McFarland to play, and then the only tour that was available to us was Cannibal Corpse. So we went from Candlemass to Cannibal Corpse.
Wow.
And then bless their hearts for taking us out and everything, but I mean we just couldn't have been more different as bands.
Yeah.
And their fans, they wanted no part of it. We were way too complicated for what they wanted. They just wanted to slam and bash it out, and we were stopping on a dime like every 2 seconds. So
right.
Confusing for fans back then. Like we never stayed in one mood for longer than 20 seconds, and so that was not
quick story on that. My first album by you guys was Unquestionable, and I was actually out in LA with Steve Wilson. We were record shopping in Amoeba, and I saw that, and I'm like, the reissue from Relapse. It was probably 2006, I think that came out, right? 2005 or 2006, I believe it was. And I'm like, yeah, I know that name. You know what? I'm gonna take a chance on it. I know that name. I'm gonna grab it. But when I threw it in, I was just like, what the fuck is this? Like, literally, I couldn't wrap my head around it initially. I came to death metal very late. I came to death metal through Opeth. There you go, through Opeth Blackwater Park. So I was kind of a late comer.
Late bloomer.
Yeah, I was. But remember, dude, I'm kind of older. I'm a little bit older. I'm almost 4 years older, and I just I knew about these bands, and I will tell you, Deicide, Death, all those bands in the late 80s, when I tried them, I was like, man, I cannot do these vocals. I just can't do it. But Opus Blackwater Park was the gateway drug for me. It allowed me to do it. So once I got it, once it finally clicked for me, I was like, this shit is so far beyond what anybody else is doing. I don't even get it, So you got Tony leaves, he goes to Pestilence, you go out with McFarland, and then the band kind of dissolves, sort of, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it was tough. We were just getting shit thrown at us, and nobody liked what we were doing, and it was really hard. So we came back, and Steve was like, "Yeah, I'm gonna go to college," and I was like, I was just starting Neurotica at that point. I was like not knowing what was going to happen, and I'm trying to remember the actual chronological timeline of it all. But so I got some financing and wrote a bunch of songs for what would become Neurotica. And I was in a studio in Gainesville, Florida, and I met River Phoenix and Joaquin Phoenix up there during that time with Neaurotica, and they would come to the studio almost on a daily basis and bring fruit and vegetarian pizza, and it was like
nice.
And I didn't really, obviously Joaquin was just a teenager at that point.
Yeah, that's right. They'd have been young, right?
Yeah, River had done Stand By Me and all that, so he was a legit actor, but he wasn't on the level that he would, the infamy that he would get after his death. But just a really sweet guy, and the whole family was super interesting. And this studio was called Pro Media, and the guy who helped build the studio was Frank Zappa's engineer, and it was Mark Pinsky.
Mark Pinsky, right.
Yeah, and so we were like, oh, and I fucking love Zappa, so we just thought, let's break away from Moore Sound, because everybody was recording there at that point,
right?
Like everybody, and so we thought, well, first of all, unquestionable, we broke up. I didn't know that we were going to do another record. So in the middle of doing the Neurotica thing, I got a call from the label in Europe, Active Records, that said, you still owe us another record. Well, at this point, Rand is gone, Steve's gone, I don't have a band, and so I literally had 42 days when I got the phone call. In 2 days, I managed to put together what would be kind of the early lineup. And I came back from Gainesville, got in a room with this drummer and this bass player, myself, and this guitar player named Frank Emmy. And started writing for a few days, and then Rand showed up, and he was kind of like, listening, and it was at a warehouse where anybody could walk up and hear us play. And I got rid of the drummer and the bass player, and got Tony Troy. Called Tony. Tony was into it, and so then I had met this drummer named Josh Greenbaum, who was actually River Phoenix's drummer. And
I wanted to ask you about him, yeah.
And Alakazatic, which was River's band, and it was River was really a musician before he was an actor. And,
yeah.
And so Josh was this amazing kid, man. It was while we were up there, we went to go see him play at this jazz improv club, and he was just improvising his ass off. And
incredible.
I was like, that's a motherfucker I want to play with. So we got him to do Elements, and he literally only had 2 weeks to learn what we had and then help us write the rest. And so 40 days from first riff to final mix on that Elements record. And it was just this, we had this apartment with like two, it was a kind of a house / apartment in Gainesville, which is a college town, really cool place. And we've tripped on mushrooms, smoked a lot of pot, and wrote Elements.
Nick appreciates that.
I mean, I may have taken a couple of mental journeys.
And that I can't believe it still stands today. And there's, Mineral, I told this story a million times, that, that the recording you hear of Mineral on Elements is less than 24 hours old. The song wasn't even 24 hours old. We wrote it less than 24 hours before we put it to tape. So we didn't have any time to think about it. And I love that. That became the template for everything I wanted to do. I was like, don't ever second guess yourself. Just write and don't think about, well, what would no. Just react.
Don't second guess yourself then.
Yeah, and that's usually the best stuff that you get, and so I've always tried to follow that philosophy ever since then.
Can you tell me one thing about what you said there with Active? Were they going to sue you, or what was the deal there? Like what you said, they gave you 40 days. What was the deal? What were they going to do if you didn't?
Scared me. I didn't know. I thought that it was going to keep me from being. I thought it was an exclusive agreement that would keep me from recording with Neurotica.
Oh, okay. That makes sense.
They're going to fuck up my career.
That makes sense. Okay.
And so I thought, I've got to get this done. I have to get this record done. And Steve was gone, but Rand came back in after we did a couple songs, and he kind of came in and started hanging out with us. And then finally I said, all right, you're going to do this with us. And so off we went. And then, once Tony came in and we got Josh together, and Tony was really instrumental on that record. He's owed a lot of credit for the rhythm section on that record, because he has
the Latin feel to it.
Yeah.
Him and Josh, the Latin feel to it. I love Elements. I love Elements. I know it's kind of somewhat of a divisive album though for some fans, because the proggy Latin influence kind of took the hardcore tech death people. What the fuck is this? That kind of thing, right? And
I like the Latin swing. Like
I love it.
That's a unique kind of groove. Like, just like I don't shake my ass to technical music very often. But I was like, oh, this is nice.
Nick, you never shake your ass to anything. Don't lie.
I shake my ass like up the stairs because I have to. It's following me.
It's surprisingly more popular in Eastern Europe than it is in even Western Europe. So in Western Europe, in Germany and Italy, places like that, they love Piece of Time and Questionable. And in Hungary, Poland, places like that, they love Elements. And Romania. And but these days, it's the 30th anniversary of this coming year, 2023 will be a 30-year anniversary of the record. There's a lot of people. I'm surprised that a lot of people have finally warmed up to Elements. The thing I think that I wish that I could redo again is the production, because it's not a slight to Mark Pinsky. It's just that it was the very first digital record that we had ever done.
Right.
Going from analog to digital. And it was a very early record for him as well. He had never done such extreme guitars, palm muting and speed and all that. He didn't account for that when he was mixing it. And so there's some overmodulated guitars on it. So there's some production issues on the album that album could be so much better if we were able to re-record it today, which I love the idea of that experiment, by the way. A lot of purists are against that, but I often say, man, I would love to re-record Unquestionable Presence with today's technology and sonics. Not to try to, obviously you can't recreate that thing, but that's one of the greatest things about seeing Atheist live now is people have been listening to these records for so long, and that production is just woven into your soul and your ear.
Right.
And you can stand in front of us on a modern 21st century PA with modern guitar tones and modern drum sounds, and it just peels your fucking skull back because they're like, holy shit.
Which Nick got to see you at MDF. I unfortunately couldn't make it down. So
it's different though, right? I mean, it's like, when it's different than listening to that record. When you're hearing it come off the stage, it's like, that's heavier than I remember it being. And it's still relative. It doesn't sound like when we toured with Cattle, it was a really interesting experiment because Cattle Decapitation fans are very, there's a lot of blasting. There's a lot of extreme sort of modern, love of metal that we're not a part of that scene necessarily, and so a lot of people were just kind of coming to the merch booth like, are you guys a new band? Like, are you new? Because the guys in the band I had were really young, and I was the old guy, and I think I had dyed my beard black for that tour. So
you did.
So nobody really kind of knew I was the old guy until they got really close, And so I think they just thought we were this fucking cool new band, and I would just say things like, how old are you? They'd say 25. And I was like, you weren't born yet when we made this music. And they were like, holy fuck, So that made me feel good, it stood the test of time. But even more so in a live setting, I love the reaction that people kind of get from it. Even close friends of mine that came to see us on this last tour with Suffo, they were just like, man, I never realized how groovy a lot of your music is. And it's not all it's not just this mindless technical thing but a lot of what we suffered from was production values that just weren't there back in the day. Scott Burns did amazing records, but he'll tell you the same thing, like, man, I wish I had today, I wish I had then what's available today.
Right.
I took Scott to a Cattle Decapitation show, and he was just blown away at how clear the blast beat was. Because this is a man that struggled with early blast beats, like trying to record, each one of those hits and try to make them consistent, pop, 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 because people don't realize that each drum hit, ideally to your ear, you want it to be consistent.
Yep.
And there weren't triggers back then.
I was going to say, are you playing to clicks back then or not? No.
We never played to a click. No.
Right.
Wow. But triggering a sound will give you no matter how hard you hit the snare, it'll give you the same sound. Well, that wasn't the case back then. So like Mazurkowitz and Cannibal, in order to get a really solid blast, he has to hit with the same force every single time.
Every time.
And if you don't, it becomes really painfully obvious. And so you got to do multiple takes. And, I think I told you, Jeff, the other day that, young people listening to records don't appreciate a guy like Steve Flynn who played everything you listen to on all the tracks that he did are all live takes. That's all one beginning to end, no stopping, no punching in, no edits, no replacing anything. That's a fucking live drum track that we built a record around. And I think that's something that people don't appreciate, but they should, because those songs are super. It's like walking a tightrope without a net. And really that way. It's difficult. And
well, yeah, you didn't have Pro Tools. You couldn't just cut and paste. And
people don't understand that Lars Ulrich, when he plays, people are listening to that new Metallica song and they're like, "Holy shit, Lars learned how to play it." It's like, no, he didn't.
No,
You know, he only had to play it 4 measures.
that's right.
And they took that 4 measure thing and bloop, 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 they copied it up, and that's he's not in it. He was one of the first guys to chop up drums. Like, you know, I mean, he could play one part 15 times and they choose the best, you know, the best ones of each one, and that's how they piece together all those you know, all the Bob Rock era Lars Ulrich drums and stuff. But
I was
so much
when
sense.
we were talking to Craig last week, Craig LaCicero, we, you know, of course, with Forbidden, everybody knows Paul Bostaff because Paul went on to Slayer, but Steve Jacobs, the drummer on Distortion, and Green, Jesus Christ, what a fucking drummer. And you see that in these I'll tell you where you really see like Jacobs and Flynn best is those home videos, man. There are home videos of you guys rehearsing with Tony Choi, with Paul Masvidal there, with Sean Reiner doing the video, and you guys are fucking crushing. And I'm like, these dudes are 22, 24 years old. How are they doing that? Like,
yeah, it was a really cool thing, you know. And looking back on you know, I was glad to see those videos sort of get out there so people could actually see the early. You know, that was just before we recorded. That was such a weird time for Tony, I can imagine, because his, you know, Roger's twin brother was standing right there watching Tony play this music for the first time. I could imagine Tony was probably like, "Oh man, you know, I hope I don't fuck this up," you know, because his brother was really, really, he was a drummer, Ronnie Patterson, and he also since passed. And, you know, he was very, everybody loved Roger. Those hard shoes to step into, but Tony fucking nailed it, man. And so it's just, you know, at that time, it was just like, I can remember Napalm Death coming to visit us at our warehouse. We didn't understand how cool that was until now that I'm older. I look back and Napalm fucking Death took time to come from their gig and drove down to our warehouse, sat up against the wall, watched us rehearse.
Just to listen to your rehearse.
Yeah, and they thanked Roger on the album, and
that's killer.
So, you know, we're all great friends now, and you know, we stay in contact, but we didn't appreciate the level of like, whoa, holy shit, you know, because you just don't, you know, you don't think about. I always have a hard time understanding how people. I still think of myself as a demo band. Everything I do, I still think, how did you know about that? You know, oh yeah, the record's out for anybody to, you know, I mean, anybody, especially these days online, you know.
Right. Oh yeah, exactly.
Still kind of like lost in that old school rotary phone era of how do you know about my band? You know,
that's because we're fucking old, dude. We're fucking old, man. We're old men.
We're just seasoned, my brother. Seasoned.
Quick question. I think I know the answer. You didn't do any touring for Elements. That was just a record and go, right?
No, we toured with Elements. We toured with Benediction. Yeah, 1993. We toured with Benediction. They were kind enough, and I love those guys, the Benny Boys. They brought us to Europe, and you know, paid for us to be on that tour. It was supposed to be Benediction, Dismember, and Cemetery in Europe, and then Dismember dropped off the tour last minute, like literally 10, 12 days or something like that before the tour was to start. So the posters and all the adverts were made and everything with Dismember's name on it. And at the last minute, they liked Atheist, and so they brought us over, and we found ourselves again sort of struggling because you know, we're playing weird shit, but it was better because Unquestionable Presence was out, and it was kind of the first time we got to play that music in Europe. So that was a really good tour for us. It was a little better than the Cannibal Corpse and the Benediction in terms of them receiving us well. Benediction killed it, and it was a lot of fun, and they were very kind to us, and I love them for it. And they, you know, they came and stayed with me in Florida. They all came back, and I took them to the beach, and we're still great friends today.
Was Tony out with you on that?
No. Wait, yes, okay. Yeah. Tony Choi, Marcel De Santos was the drummer, and he played with Miami Sound Machine.
Oh wow!
Yeah, he was like
Corey Esteban's band.
Yeah, he was like a Latin drummer, and so you know, he did a decent job playing the material, but he was cutting corners. He didn't play it the way we play it now. The way, you know, the new guys I have in Atheist now play things exactly, if not better in a lot of ways, because they're closer to the time. You know, not to a click, but it's just more cohesive. It's not as quite as breathing and moving around. But so it was him and Frank Emmy, myself, Rand. That was the first time that I played on stage without playing guitar. Was
right, because of the rumor that you couldn't play guitar anymore, which you're gonna dispel right now, right?
Yeah, so I can play guitar, I just can't play standing up. My thumb falls asleep like really bad. So the posture of standing and playing and singing, my posture was so bad for so many years that it caused this. It just goes to sleep. But if I sit down, I can play all day. So I just came to the conclusion like I don't really care whether I play guitar on stage anyway. It's kind of a pain in the ass.
Yeah, right.
You know, strings and tuning and gear and feedback and fuck it. I'll just be, I'll just sing and have fun, and all I got to worry about is where the mic stand is, and I'm good to go. So I've always enjoyed that. But I still write, a great portion of the guitar stuff for Atheist
Did you
Band.
primarily play rhythm in the band, or did you play a lot of leads too, or what? Like
we did it equal in the first two records. My solos were pale in comparison to Rand's.
Okay.
Sure. They're always the boxy bluesy solos.
Right.
That were mine. That oddly, I can say that having new guys playing this material, some of those new guys have a harder time playing my solos than they do Rand's, because of my lack of ability. It's more bendy and it's more Clapton than it is.
Yeah. It's more feel. It's more feel than flash.
And that turns out to be a hard thing for young bloods.
Yeah.
I mean, they're kind of like, oh, you got to take one note and bend it. Yeah. It's not a tap. It's not a this. It's like, oh, you gotta feel it. And it's kind of funny to hear. I kind of bust balls on it. Like, really, you're having a hard time playing my shitty ass solo.
Hey, I don't want to gloss over Neurotica, but did we touch on that enough? Was there anything you wanted to add into that? You did get signed to a big label, and it sounds to me like you had some pretty big budgets to work with, or am I wrong?
The band got started with Brian Johnson from AC/DC fucking seeing us in a little club and agreeing to produce our album. So
no shit.
Let's lead with that story right there. Holy shit! For a death metal kid, I was like, what? There was just an amazing revelation to happen coming from the underground to make music that mattered to a guy like that. He
lives down there? Was that the deal? He lived near? Okay, and he saw you in a bar doing a bar show, or?
It wasn't even a bar. It was like a deli that turned into a punk rock deli at night. It was like 60 people tops there.
No way.
I was sitting up in this balcony office with the owner of the thing, smoking fucking weed. In between, we were playing like 3 sets a night, and we're smoking a joint. And we look down, and he comes in with this other guy, Doug Kay, and they sit at this table, which was essentially 10 feet in front of where we were set up on the floor. That's how small this place was.
Oh, wow.
No stage or nothing. And like I said, during the day, they sort of served sandwiches, and at night they would let bands play in there. And so I immediately said, put that joint out. Let's go. He may not fucking stay very long. We've got to go down there and just fucking sweat and spit right in his face. Let's go. And we did. And he bought us all a round of beers. And then the next day we got a call from the guy that was with him and said, hey, Brian really enjoyed the demo that you guys gave him, and wanted to, if you have any more songs. And I was like, yeah, we got a bunch of fucking songs. And so, yeah, we got in the studio, and he was like, he heard the song we had called Two Worlds, and it just reminded him of this movie project that he was working on, and he wanted to produce our record. And we were like, okay. AC/DC doesn't work with anybody, so we just thought that was really incredible. And next thing you know, man, we're working on this song Easy Speak, and one of the first things that he did as a producer was, like, we started this song. We were kind of like more tripped out. We were a rock band, but we had a lot of long extra shit on our songs. And the first thing he did was like trim all that up. And the song Easy Speak in general that ended up on the radio and ended up being kind of a hit song in a way was he was like, Kelly said you should fucking start the song with the chorus. And I was like, no. And it was just unheard of to me. And I kind of, wrinkled my nose. And at the end of the day, I thought, all right, well, I should listen to this guy, and we did that. And once I did it, it became this thing to me where I need to learn to listen to people more.
Yeah.
I need to try things, at least try it, because if it wasn't him that said that to me, I never would have tried that. But the fact that I tried it was like, holy shit, you're a fucking genius. And it really made the song so fucking cool. And and I learned a lot from that moment. So we did the song, and there was a very popular DJ named Bubba the Love Sponge in Tampa Bay.
Oh yeah, I remember him.
And he and Brian were friends, and so he invited them down to the studio to listen to this song, and they loved it so much that guy Bubba stole the CD and played it on the radio the next morning.
No shit.
We got a bunch of calls, and next thing you know, and the rest of the record wasn't done yet. It was recorded, but it wasn't mixed. And so Brian booked time in Vancouver with Mike Frazier, who had done Metallica's Load and Reload, and he did Aerosmith Pump, and big name Grammy award-winning guy, and got in the studio in Vancouver, Bryan Adams' studio, and remixed and mixed the whole record to get it ready, because that song was already, because of what Bubba did, it got out to radio, and next thing you know,
This is Seed.
Yeah, Seed.
Okay, right.
Yeah, the song was Easy Speak, and
okay.
So yeah, that was it was just completely different part of the industry than I'd ever been a part of, and for me, it felt really good to be singing, as opposed to screaming, and it was just a different kind of fan base, different kind of accolades, and but also a different kind of business. Trying to please radio, trying to, even if you have a great song, trying to get on the radio back then was very, very difficult because we weren't on a major label, even though we had Brian Johnson producing, and he was actually on a song with me. He wrote this song called Deadly Sin, and he gave it to me, and it was like this arena rock AC/DC-ish song. And I was like, I said, we can't really do that. So I took it home and I tuned it down to D, and I came back in the next day to the studio and we played it, and he fucking loved it. And he was like, and he ended up singing on it with me. So we got to do a little duet.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, it was cool. So for me, like I told you earlier in the program, the first thing I remember being excited about music was my dad playing AC/DC for me. Even though it was Bon Scott, it was still the next best thing. I got this, so looking through the glass in the studio with headphones on like this and singing, and that guy's coming through my ear going, "Get me son, that's fucking great. That's fucking great, me son." And I'll be like, "All right, it's fucking great."
Giving me timbers, Lucky Charms.
That's how he talks, man. It's great. I love him. And
but I guess when you're you never could have envisioned as a teenage kid that you would meet that guy and be working with that guy.
No, as a death metal kid either.
Oh yeah.
That's just a world that we don't, you don't get to go to those parties, And
so was that period with Neurotica? Was that? I'm gonna try to phrase this delicately. Was that the period where maybe financially you did the best that you've done as a musician, or
not financially, but from perspective of being on television, like they would play our music on SmackDown, and we had full page ads on the back of Mad Magazine, and all these major magazines because of the involvement. They spent $500,000 on our band, and then they asked, we wanted to go on tour, and they hooked us up with the same agent that had like Britney and NSYNC, a company called Evolution Talent. And I remember the meeting there where they were like, "Oh, we're going to put you on the road with Fozzy," and I was like, "No, no, that can't. We cannot be a wrestling band." Like I was super adamant against that confusion with people, and they were like, "Well, you're a brand new band. What do you want to do?" I was like, "Ozfest. You guys are, WWE's involved. You guys are a large agency. Let's just pretend like we've always been a cool band, but nobody knew about it. Everybody was asleep at the wheel, so to speak." So sure enough, they ended up not only getting us on the tour, but because they sponsored it, Sharon waived our money, so we didn't have to pay the $75,000 fee that it cost to be on that tour.
Are you kidding me? It cost $75,000 to be on the tour.
That was then, just to be on the tour, and then you got to pay 80 or 90 grand for your bus and your crew and all the other shit. So that was a huge deal. So I always, when people tease me about being a foot stomper and a bitcher, squeaky wheel gets the fucking grease, man.
Yeah.
I was like, fuck that. We're not going on tour with Fozzy. Let's go on Ozfest. And that turned out really great.
Did you make money on that tour? I mean,
no, not life-changing money, but I mean, we certainly got paid more than, we got paid. So yeah, we came home with a little bit of money, but I mean, it was more about, Rolling Stone wrote about our band, like
getting the exposure, getting that big,
And then, but then, they didn't have an infrastructure. They didn't have a knowledge of. They fucked it up the same way they fucked up the XFL. They tried to intermingle their wrestling shit with music shit, and so they fired this guy Ron McCarroll, who was a 30-year Sony guy, and they this other guy, Benji Gordon, who worked at Columbia and signed like Soul Asylum. They had the right guys in place to run this label. But this guy that named Jim Johnson, who made all their theme music, was this fucking total dork. Like when they flew us to Connecticut and we went to the compound where the WWE was, and they showed us all around. We had a meeting with Vince and Linda and all them, and so we initially, this guy Jim Johnson, the company was so big at that time they didn't even realize Jim Johnson, the guy that makes all their music, is their music director essentially and makes theme music for all the wrestlers. Didn't even realize that they were starting a record label, and that people were already in place. We were the first band signed. Wow. So once he found out, him and Vince had been friends for 17 years. And so he stepped in and said, I should be the president of this label. And they fucking fired the guy from Columbia and the guy from, they fired the guy from Sony, and the guy from Columbia stuck around. But it was just like, what? Why would you do that? To put this guy that's never been on stage, never made a record in his life, you know, when I met him, when we went for the meeting, So you know, we got signed. They announced it on AOL, like when you go to sign in for AOL each day, it was like right next to that. Neurotica signs with SmackDown Records. It was like a big fucking deal. And so we went to Dean to get endorsements. We're coming back with our new guitars, and we get a call that says, yeah, we're not going to put your record out yet. We're going to bring you up here. There's been some change in management, so Jim Johnson's going to be the new president of the label. And we were like, who? He makes all the theme music for us, so we need you guys to come up here and work with him on some theme music before we put the record out. I was like, the fuck we are definitely not making fucking theme music for wrestling. And I went home, true story, and I wrote a nasty letter to Vince McMahon, and I said, you know, how dare you fucking ask me to work with this guy that's never been on stage or never made a record. You wouldn't ask the Big Show to fucking train with Bruce Lee to be a better wrestler, would you? I mean, I wrote all this to Vince, and it pissed him off to the point where he flew me and our manager and our guitar player to Connecticut, and we sat in this room at this big wooden table, and in walked Shane, Stephanie, Vince, Linda McMahon. This is before Triple H, I think, was involved. And they came in, and he looked at me, and he goes, Molly looking crew. And I said, yeah. He goes, so tell me what's going on. And so Jim Johnson was sitting there with him. And, you know, again, this is his friend of 17 years. And I proceeded to tell him to his face, like, this guy doesn't understand where we're coming from. We're a fucking rock band. You just paid $85,000 for a fucking rock band. Let me do what I do. Let me, you know, you can't expect your wrestlers to be training with boxers and wrestling. So I used all those analogies. And he fucking sat back in his chair like Vince McMahon would. He goes, all right, we're going to put this record out. And he goes, I need you to go talk to Kevin Dunn. He's our TV guy. And at the time, they had a show called Tough Enough on MTV.
Yeah.
Yeah. They had a lot of, they had 10 hours of television. That's what I told Vince. I was like, you don't need radio. This is an unprecedented business model that you have. We don't need to be fucking around making theme music. We're a fucking rock band. This guy knows nothing about that shit. The only reason this guy wants us to come up here is because he wants 50% of our publishing. He did it to Cypress Hill. He did it to all the bands, all these big bands. You're not even getting a piece of it. And fucking, he looked at that guy too, like, what? I said, yeah, you paid $3 million for this guy's studio. He's collecting publishing on all the theme music for all of your big wrestlers. He's the one collecting it. You should be collecting it. And that guy ended up getting fired as well. Jim Johnson. Fuck you, buddy.
Thanks to you, Kelly. Thanks to you, man.
You're fucking unemployed now, you asshole. But what happened was, he goes, all right, I need you to go talk to Kevin Dunn. So then I go to, they put us in a golf cart, drive us to this Kevin Dunn guy, and he opens the door, and he's like 5'6", and this little snivelly guy, and he's like, Vince just called and said you guys are coming over. He goes, I heard the record and I don't get it. And I said, well, how old are you? It's funny that he was 54 at my age. At the time, he was 54. I said, well, you don't know shit about music. I said, do you have a son? Play it for him. And that's exactly what I said to the guy. And that guy did not like me, and I didn't like him. And they, for the next year, they did everything they could do to sabotage that scenario until they finally, Linda McMahon called at the end of Ozfest and said, Kelly, we're just not good at this. The record business is a fickle one. It's difficult to get on the radio because you can't get on the radio if Capitol Records and Sony and DreamWorks and all these people are trying to get bands on the radio. And then all of a sudden a new song gets added by this band Neaurotica that's on the WWE's label, SmackDown Records. Capitol wants to know well, all right, so if you're going to play that band and not our band, then you're not going to get Pearl Jam or blah, blah, blah. You know, so they
Right.
used their leverage
They're
against us.
leverage. They're leveraging. Yeah.
And then it just became this really hard thing where Linda was like, you know, but we'll give you, but they paid all that money, and then they gave we remixed that record with Kevin Shirley, who ended up going on to do all the Maiden records.
Maiden, right?
At the Hit Factory in New York, no less. So and he did an amazing job. So the Blue record was originally called Living in Dog Years, and it was done by Tom Morris at Morris Sound. And when we signed with WWE, we went to the Hit Factory with Kevin Shirley, and so you know, that guy was a Grammy Award winning. So it was just all this different world from death metal from that, and but they gave us that record back. They gave us typically they could have kept it. And
the right, you mean?
Yeah, the publishing and all that. But after all that money, they were just not the smartest. I guess they're smart at what they do, but
was that a multi-album contract, or I mean, and they just released you, or what?
Well, they just said, here's your record back, and we're not very good at it. We're folding the label. So
okay. Label
we
folded.
Thank you. Took it back, and they didn't give us a bill. Nobody sent us a bill. I mean, again, at least $500,000 they spent. You know,
wow.
They spent $32 million on XFL just to shit the bed. You know, I think that's always been the case with you know, with that company. They're very good at wrestling, but every time they try to trickle outside the bounds of it, they fuck it up.
They did give us the swing cam. They did give us the swing cam that you see in the NFL. I believe
that came from the XFL, man.
That was smart.
Yeah,
I actually bought the compilations from WWF that they actually had, and I remembered, like, you know, seeing the SmackDown label on, you know, Neurotica. I was like, whatever happened to that? I was, you know what that Jim Johnson guy did after that? After I embarrassed him in front of Vince and I said that shit to Kevin Dunn, they put Forcible Entry out, which had all those, you know, Kid Rock, and he remixed Ride of Your Life and pulled one of the guitars out and put keyboards in it. He played keyboards on it, this asshole. So on that Forcible Entry, when you listen to that version of Ride of Your Life, it sounds like shit. And that was just that guy just trying to live vicariously through all the artists that he was working with. So yeah, it was more like nepotism now. Let's just promote him just because.
And then when that happened, I came home, and I really, at that point, I'd been through all this shit with Atheist, and I owned a head shop at that time, and so it was a pretty good business. And I thought, you know, am I going to continue on with this music? I don't know. You know, I don't. You know, what is this going to be the end for me? And then I'm watching the early days of the internet, and I see this press release that comes out and says Slash says there are no real frontmen in rock and roll anymore. And I was like, the fuck, there isn't. So I fucking called my manager. I was like, Slash is putting a band together. I need to send my demo out there. You know, send the album to Slash. And
yeah, I want to hear this.
My manager was like, oh, come on, dude. You know, he's my friend. His name's Doug Kay. And he was like, dude, he's in LA. There's going to be a million singers out there. Like, you know, you're kind of fucking pissing in a large pond. I said, you know, are you telling me you're not going to send it out there? He's like, no, I'm not going to send it. So I remembered that our publicist at Koch Records used to be Slash's publicist. And so I called her before I could even get it out of my mouth, because it was a big deal at that time. Guns N' Roses.
Oh yeah, I remember it.
And she was like, oh my God, Kelly, you would be perfect. And so she sent the fucking CD to Slash, and fucking 3 days later, I get a call from goddamn Slash.
No shit.
Yeah, and he left a message on my machine. Hey, Kelly, it's Slash. That's exactly what he said. Like, just like that. I thought, hey, Slash.
You're like, what?
And I I was sitting in a bar with some friends, and I heard the message, and I was like, you're not going to believe who just fucking called my phone. So then I passed it around to all my friends, and I was like, get the fuck out of here. I can't believe it. So I get on the phone with Slash, and he's like, yeah, you know, we've been listening to hundreds of singers, and it's just exhausting. He's like, yeah, me and Duff sat and listened to this whole record. It's really good. What happened to this band? And I said, we just broke up. We just kind of disbanded. We did Ozfest, and we fell apart. And I kind of explained the story a little bit. He goes, okay, so I'm going to send you like 3 songs and just do your thing and send it back. So he sent me some music, and I got the package, and the return address said Saul Hudson.
Yeah.
I was like, this is fucking Slash. It was really... So I went in and wrote lyrics and sent it back, and then they called and on a conference call, Duff and Slash, and said, come to LA. And I was like, fucking, let's go.
Now, what year are we talking here? I'm trying to remember.
2003.
Okay, right.
And next thing you know, I'm in a room with fucking Guns N' Roses, essentially. It's Guns and Kelly.
Yeah, right.
And I was just kind of bugged out, and I never let them know anything about my death metal roots or any of that shit at all. And Yeah, it was a weird thing. You know, I went in, I did the audition, and then I could tell they wanted to talk, and so I went outside to smoke a cigarette, and I'm in the parking lot at this place called Mates in LA, which like Thin Lizzy was practicing there, and Sebastian Bach was there. It was like this really cool rehearsal spot. It's kind of like where we rehearsed, except famous people were there. And
except famous people were there.
So I wait for about 10 minutes, and Duff comes out, and he's about 100 yards away from me. He looks at me, he goes like that, and I was like, what's that mean? You know, and so I go up to him, and he's like, hey, can you stay the weekend? So already I didn't have the money to really be there anyway. I couldn't fly out there, and so I called my manager, the one that told me he wasn't going to send the disc off to Slash, and I said, will you pay for my hotel so I can stay out here this weekend? And he's like, yeah, absolutely. And so I proceeded to go in the studio and do another song that Izzy had wrote with Slash. At that point, Izzy Stradlin was still involved.
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
And so I left, man, feeling, like I had a conversation with Slash about it. He was like, man, you're really great singing. He goes, I don't know what's going to happen, because there's a lot of hands, in this. He's like, well, just know you're a really great singer. And that was the first time I felt like a real singer, because he was kind of like the Joe Perry of my, he's kind of like I don't know, he's kind of the, he's an iconic guitar player. And so it made me feel like a legit singer for once in my career. It took that to make me feel that way. But, so, and then I got home, and then on his Slash's Snake Pit website, he listed me as the dude. And then Rolling Stone ran an article, and it showed a picture of Travis Meeks from Days of the New, myself.
I remember Travis, yeah.
Sebastian and Scott Weiland. And so, as a story, being there, the story you see on VH1 is a lot different, than the phone calls and the conversations that I had with Duff. Duff's wife and Scott Weiland's wife are friends. And so they found out that there was that Scott was going to be available, and then management stepped in, and out I went. That was the end for me. But
so close, but so far.
But I, I don't know that, that. And then I get a call asking me to go audition for Rockstar Supernova with Tommy Lee and Jason Newsted.
I remember that show. Yeah.
That? So off I go with my happy. I was still trying to figure out what I'm going to do with my life, And,
sure.
And I go and I audition, and the guy that's singing after me is fucking Jeff Scott Soto.
Oh.
I thought there's no way I'm getting a call back. And I got the call back, and I sang a Neurotica song for Newsted and Gilby Clarke and Tommy Lee. And so I was just like, everybody else was singing covers. And so they really liked the song Ride Your Life that I did. And, but I didn't think that I was going to get the call back. So I go back to my friend's apartment. I get the call back. I go back the next day. Jeff Scott Soto is not there. I was like, he didn't get the call back, and I got the call back, and
you beat him.
Oh my God! Another funny story is, like, I had a gig 3 days before going to that audition, and I took the microphone and knocked my front tooth out. So now I'm singing with a missing front tooth for fucking Jason Newsted, Tommy Lee, and Gilby Clarke. So it was the worst scenario ever, But I got to the final 64, and I started getting a little worried because it was at the very time when I was starting to put the Atheist thing back together. And I was starting to get this.
So going to that once you're done with it.
Oh my God! If I get this television show, my metal cred's gonna go right out the fucking door. And and I was thought, not that really mattered that much, but I was just, and plus it was a life decision. Like, I'll have to be in LA I was just having a baby.
Oh right.
My daughter was just being born. Like, I'm gonna have to go to LA for 6 to 8 weeks to do this TV show. So there was a lot of weird things going on. So thankfully, I did not make that final cut, and that show ended up being a joke anyway.
It was. Oh.
So, the universe has a weird way of kind of guiding you through, even though things can be odd and strange. You just got to ride it out and figure out, where it's at, And so I've had a really interesting journey, and it's far from over. I mean,
what was the impetus? What was the catalyst to get Atheist back together in 2006?
Not being able to find the CDs. Like, I didn't have any copies of Atheist CDs, and eBay was this new thing that I was like,
sure.
People were like, yeah, try to find it on eBay. And I went there, and it was $150. And I was like, there's not any CD that I would pay $150 for. What?
Yeah.
If somebody cares that much, then we should put these records back out again. And so I knew that the record company in Europe had not ever given us statements, never did business correctly. So I just I found copies of each of the records and bootlegged them, and started my own company and licensed them to Relapse. And so because we never had the master We never had the master reels for any of those records.
Oh, really?
We just took it, remastered it, put new liner notes, new photos, made it look better, and the rest is history, man. That's what we've been rolling on ever since then. And we really, it was just about making them available. It wasn't about putting the band back together. But 2 years after that, or a year or so after that, we started getting offers to play shows, Clock In and Hellfest, and still we were like, no, we're not going to do a new record or nothing like that. We're just go out and play some shows, and it's nice that people remember. But not only did they remember, it actually ended up being a much bigger deal than we expected, and it just kind of parlayed into all these years later.
So Seasons of Mist comes calling, or did you demo stuff to get that deal? How'd that come about?
Michael at Season of Mist was a fan of Atheist since he was 12 years old, and he was just he ended up growing up to become a label owner, and he for probably 3 years before we did the record, said, you guys have to do the record, I'll pay for it, blah blah blah, you do it on my label. And we were like, oh man, I don't think we're ever going to be able to recreate that history of 17 years ago. You know what I mean? And we'd rather leave the history intact. And then, he finally just said, look, we'll do this right. We have a really good budget, and I have a label with great distribution globally. And so me and Steve decided to get in a room and just see what happened, and we wrote Second to Sun. That was the first thing that we wrote from Jupiter. And we were like, wow. And it was weird because it was like third person, like, holy shit, that sounds like a new Atheist song. You know what I mean? Like we were listening. You know what I mean? It was like it's just we didn't realize how much we sound like ourselves until we heard what we wrote together, and the combination of the two of us. Because Steve always has a knack of creating drums that are just like I could write a riff that's kind of ordinary, but his drums end up making it sound like it's not as ordinary as it is. And so that was kind of this realization at that point, and then we're like, all right, let's do it. And so Jupiter it was.
He's a melodic player. He's very melodic the way he plays.
Huge Pert fan, and but he doesn't play anything straight. As melodic as it sounds, it's actually, when you break it down, it's kind of anti-melodic, but it ends up being really structured in a memorable way. Like he has some very interesting drum patterns that just aren't normal, and I enjoy that a lot, and I think that kind of helps us separate ourselves from other technical bands, because there's a lot of bands, like obviously bands from today, that are 50 times more technical than
it's stupid, over technical in a lot of ways.
Yeah,
but it's funny to put some of these young virtuoso guys in a position of having to learn. For instance, Obscura did a cover of Piece of Time.
That's right.
Have you ever heard it?
I have not, but I remember seeing that. Not good?
No. It's just not accurate.
Oh, okay.
As good. Hannes Grossman is one of the best drummers on earth.
Jesus Christ!
Easily, just this ridiculous drummer. But oddly, he didn't play it right. He didn't. And I thought, oh my god, there was like little signature things in there that were that they were missing. And I was like, wow, that's interesting that they're not catching those things. And then I found in the years of auditioning, a new band to go out and play live, where people hear things and they think it's this, but it's actually this. And a lot of the hardest part is, a lot of these kids that are, virtuoso and amazing players, everything's moving at a really fast speed. As soon as you slow it down a little bit and have to create dynamics, it throws a lot of technical people off. Like,
you're right.
They're hiding behind the speed. It's just that there was enough fundamental old school shit in Atheist, the roots that a lot of modern metal kids that started their metal education from Death, bands like Death and Morbid, and Pestilence and old Destruction and stuff like that. If their musical journey starts there, then you're missing out on Sabbath and Iron Butterfly and all these different things that we pulled from with Atheist, and that maybe your techniques and bends, a lot of bendy things that aren't typically in today's technical music. But
that's true.
When I listen to Between the Buried and Me and Animals as Leaders, I mean, I couldn't play one of those songs my life depended on it.
Like, you're right. Neither could I.
So good, it's so good.
So you had Tony. You had Tony on, or no? He was gonna play on Jupiter, but something happened there, and then you also had two different guitar players. So what? Can you give a little context to that?
Yeah, there were Chris Baker and Jonathan Thompson. When Tony left, Jonathan was also a bass player, so he ended up playing the bass on the album because Tony bailed out, and he had something going on. It was like a cruise ship job or something like that. And it was just So he, in the beginning, kind of helped us work on that first song a little bit, and then disappeared. And so we had Sonny Carson initially, and Chris Baker that would play in the live shows with us. Well, then we let Sonny go, and we got Jonathan to play guitar, and then we really started like digging into the record. And those guys are great players. They're Jonathan especially was really wrote some interesting stuff on Jupiter, and Chris Baker was, but we weren't playing with those guys. We weren't playing the music as accurately as it's played today. It was more about logistic convenience because they were in the same town as Steve, and we were able to get together and rehearse and all be. All I had to do was fly up to Atlanta and jam with them, and so while they did a really great job, it wasn't the job that I personally hoped that we would be able to do in recreating the music and the solos to be played, as close to exact as possible. And I felt like if we did that it would hit differently. And that just kind of dissipated. And a little while where I didn't know really what we were going to do in terms of moving forward. We got a couple of other players, a different bass player at one point, Travis Morgan, another guitar player, and we kind of just mulled our way through shows. And Steve always had a very difficult time touring. Never wanted to tour. He could never do more than 5 to 7 shows at a time, and so it just became really, really frustrating. So I told Steve I'm going to get a live drummer, and so I started working together to put together a new live band, and to be able to go out and play, because this is all I do. Steve has a corporate job and a family, and so this is all I've ever done and all I ever want to do. So that's what started this new era of Atheist.
Do you want to talk about what's going on with the new era of Atheist? Where we're going, where we're headed right now?
Yeah, I mean, we got caught up in a legal battle with a Polish label that is bullshit, and they've been holding us up for 4 years. And there's not a lot of Polish labels that you can figure out who it is. And so we're working hard to get that resolved. And because when you get caught up in a legal bind, and the companies in Poland, you have to litigate in Poland. Right. Obviously, we can't fucking do that. So it's taken a little longer than we'd like to move forward and make a new record. That's what's holding us back at this point. It's not for a lack of creativity. I mean, so to remedy that creativity, I started a new band.
Right. Well, let's segue into that, and then I'll let Nick ask a question or two. We'll do these albums, and I'll get you out of here. Does that sound good?
Cool. Yeah, my wife's gonna kill me.
All right. So
last interview.
Till the Dirt. It's a new band. You want to talk about who's in the band?
Well, yeah. So it wasn't a band. Like, it's the weirdest thing I've ever been a part of. So COVID happens, and all of a sudden we're locked down. And I've at that time Thor was 4 years old, and I was at home. My wife's a bartender, so she would go to work at 7 o'clock, and I just got a new studio set up. A friend of mine named Chris Hare gave me this PreSonus Studio One, and here you can record at home. It's like Pro Tools, and right on your laptop. And I got these guitar plugins, and I got the setup, and I never had that setup ever. I've never been able to record by myself on my own. Right. And so I would spend from 7 o'clock until like 3 in.the.morning writing songs, and I was writing riffs for Atheist. So I put together like 3.5 hours of just riffs with drums to a click and all that, and started logging them, the ideas in hopes of putting together an Atheist record in the future. Right. Then I started writing, instead of just riffs, I started putting together songs, and these songs were, the first song was like, let me try to do some vocals, and I did, and I used my Atheist voice and my Neurotica voice at the same time, because I didn't think anybody was going to ever hear it, and I was just having fun, and it became this weird thing. I was like, oh, that's a cool fucking hybrid of styles. It's weird to hear that over the top of really fast blast beats. And so one thing led to another, and I did I wrote 20 songs in 6 weeks. But the first 2 I wrote, I was like really like, I wonder what my peers would think about it. So I sent it to like Gene Hoglan and Terrence Hobbs, and I sent it to all my contemporaries. I was like, does this sound cool to you? And they were like, yeah, it sounds different. Steve DiGiorgio and this. So I just I got inspired by it. And I have a writer friend named Gunnar Sauerman who writes for Metal Hammer and worked at Season of Mist for a while, and he's a guy that I knew didn't like Atheist. he's a black metal guy. And I was like, I need some real honesty here. You know, I need somebody to not give me the shine job. I know this guy does not like Atheist. He'll fucking tell me.
Yeah.
So I sent it to him, and he was like very enthusiastic about it. I really feel like you have something different here. And so I would continue each night to write a different song, send it to him. And he was in Europe. So when I got done at 3 a.m, it was 9 a.m. there. And I would go to sleep and wake up, and he'd write me a letter back and say, "This is fucking fantastic." And he's just a really colorful character. And so that little thing, much like Borivoy Kryn was to Atheist, but you know, we literally used to write songs for Borivoy's approval. Like that, he was the only opinion that we cared about back when we were writing songs. And Gunnar Sauerman was that way for me before Scott Burns became involved. And so anyway, I wrote these 20 songs, and more than 20 actually, and started kind of like, but again, these are songs that I wrote everything. I wrote all the guitars. I played bass on it. I wrote the drums. I demoed them, and the demos sounded really listenable, like really fucking good, to the point where I reconnected with Scott Burns on the phone. We hadn't talked in probably 25 years. And we just were talking as friends. And Tim Hubbard, the photographer that took all the old school Tampa metal shots from back in the day, hooked us back up again. And this was in an early Trump era political thing. And Scott and myself have very strong feelings about politics, and neither one of us are huge fans of Trump at all. And so initially Scott was like, well, he told Tim Hubbard, he's like, I don't know, I don't know if I want to talk to him. If he's a Trumpy, I don't want to talk to him. I was like, fuck no, I'm not a Trumpy. So then we get on the phone, we have a great conversation. And then I get to the end of the conversation. I'm like, hey man, I got some new music. And so what I didn't know at that point was he was like, oh, I'm just going to go and ruin this now, because I'm going to have to tell Kelly his music is old and dated. And he was just expecting me to send him, atheist type shit. And we already did that, done that and been there. And so when I sent him my demos for Till the Dirt, he was immediately like, oh shit, this is different. This is really different. He was excited about it, and that got me excited. And so then we started working on songs together, and put the album together. And because I had written the drums, I had done everything. I initially thought maybe it would be a solo album, and then people were kind of telling me, yeah, like Monty Connor was like at Nuclear Blast, he had done Slipknot and all these things. He goes, as big as Slipknot is, when the Clown did a solo record, nobody gave a shit.
Yeah, right.
Solo records are just tough, Kelly. Nobody cares. So I was like, all right, well. So me and Scott decided to get a drummer to play the drums on the album, and then have the guitar players and the guys that were playing with me in Atheist track the album, track what I wrote, and keep my guitar tracks on there as well.
Right.
And so that's what happened, and we did the record, and sent it to Monty, and we signed with Nuclear Blast, and it's coming out in April, and it's fucking.
It's okay. So we have a date. We have a month at this point.
I think it's April. I think it's the either March or April, but we're already working on the details of it, and it'll definitely be early spring of 2023 for sure.
Well, you kindly sent the entire album, I believe, to me, right? I believe it was the whole album. And the first day I listened to him, I was like,
you have to explain that you listened to him in the heels of after listening to Zebra and what else?
No. No, hold on. That's not true. I listened to him before I did Zebra and Al Don't Know.
So it was just
I listened to him again twice, and you want my honest appraisal?
Yeah. Not for everybody.
Yeah, the drumming on here is fucking mind-boggling. It's a wall of sound with the drums a lot of the time. And that took me by surprise a little bit. The other thing, a couple other notable things is I kept trying to figure out, like, who does this sound like? Because that's what we do. We always want to classify and genreify, right? I still can't. Now, it's only 3 listens in, but I still can't. I did send one track to Nick. I hope you don't mind.
You sent me 3?
No, I thought I sent you 1.
No, you sent me 3.
There
were 3 different songs.
You would expect that from me, right? I mean, wouldn't you? I mean, that's the same thing. It's all familiar to me, because with Atheists, people are like, what is this? I don't know what this is. I can't compare it to anything.
But here's the thing.
Deja vu I'm having, though.
It doesn't sound like anything like Atheist. Not at all.
Like, maybe close to Jupiter, but like it feels like there's like
you can hear my influence You can hear what role I bring to Atheist when you listen to Till the Day. You can be like, oh, I can maybe tell the guitar parts. I can tell where, now when you go back and listen to Atheist, you'll hear harmony parts and things that go, oh, I bet Kelly wrote that riff because it sounds very Kelly-esque, but yeah, the formula and the vocals, I think I told you, Jeff, it's got a, there's a lot of tipping of the hat to old school Seattle.
Yeah. There's a very Lane-esque. You don't sound like Lane, but you have some Lane isms that I hear in there.
And it's over the top of blast beats at 230 beats per minute.
Dude,
fast, crazy shit. So it's a weird contrast that people aren't used to hearing. And
yes.
And it'll take a couple of listens, but God damn it, that's why you should make music. You don't make, if you listen to a record and you get it all the first time you listen to it, then you're moving on to another record. And
I noticed by listen 3, I was picking things up I did not hear the first time. The first time I heard it, Kelly, I was like overwhelmed with it. It was like, holy fucking shit. This is overwhelming. This is a wall of sound coming at me.
Yeah.
Then I started to pick up the melodies, and I'll tell you right now, the song with Jeff Loomis, Privilege, is really cool. Outside the Spiral is very cool. It's got that catchy chorus that's not poppy, but there's something catchy there. The first song, Starring Role, that one's very catchy. But I think my favorite song on the album, Forest to Because. The riffs in that song are so fucking unique. The rhythm that you're doing, that staccato off time sort of thing, it makes you feel like you're on a fucking, a ride at an amusement park where you're going and you're getting dizzy and you're gonna get sick, but it's fucking cool as hell, man. And it's weird, the juxtaposition of your harsh vocals, which sometimes like almost approach like blackened black metal. Go ahead. I know you have the
vocal, like the vocal shifts on it. I mean, I like really interesting vocal dynamics. Like as soon as I heard the clean vocals over blast beats, it made me think of past Lotus Eaters, which it's one of like the only examples I can think of in terms of like clean vocals over blast beats. And it's like, dude, why isn't that done more? It's a really cool fucking thing. But you have some like almost black metal shrieks on there, and it really contributes a lot to the atmosphere. Like it feels.
Can I tell you the weird experiment? And this is, kind of shameful in a way, but music is a reflection of your personality and whatever you're feeling. So anger, sadness, whatever, and also smoking weed, drinking, all those things affect you, how your feelings are. Well, because I was stuck at home with COVID, it was the very first time I ever drank alcohol and played music. So I would perform, but never wrote music while having shots of Jägermeister. And so what it did is create this angrier side of me. Like, I was mad because we were locked down, stuck at home. I was mad about this, this fucking COVID that's going around, and everybody kind of had this unsure feeling about things. And I didn't realize it, but now I can analyze it. And I was drinking 4 or 5 shots of by the end of the night, when I had my song done, I went to go do the vocals. I was pretty fucking hammered doing those vocals. I mean, just being completely candid with you. And I, much like you'll start a fight with somebody in a bar that's bigger than you when you're drunk, I was trying things vocally that I would talk myself out of if I was just high. If I was just smoking pot, I would have been like, oh, no, I don't want to do that. But a couple shots in, it's like, I'm gonna shriek bloody murder. And so it came out really vicious and nasty and angry. And,
I dug it.
But it was an honest feel of in a reactionary sort of thing that happened very third person, again, to use that term again. But so I'm so much so that I was telling a friend the other day, like I had to, these songs have never been performed live or any otherwise. Like they're completely in the universe and I can listen to them, but they've never actually been played. So I really look forward to, I've got the band put together, the live band and everything. And then from this point forward, I'll work with other musicians on the record, but I'll still use the same philosophy. So I wrote, I literally have the second album already done, demoed and ready to go. So it's really excited about the band. Steve DiGiorgio did bass tracks on a song. Jeff Loomis, as you mentioned, did a solo, and John Longstreth played.
Oh, that's right. You got John Longstreth on there too.
Jesus
from Obscura. Yeah.
Yeah, so
I don't think I sent you that one, Nick. Off the, and I'm sorry, Kelly. I should have asked for your permission, but I knew Nick was coming on. He's cool. He's not gonna.
It's gonna. I look forward for everybody to hear it. I mean, believe me, I've been sitting on it for 2 years, waiting for this COVID thing to go away so that we can get down to business. So 2023 is going to be a great year for Atheist and for this new Till the Dirt band. It's going to be. But I want people to understand though that it's not Atheist. It's not.
No, it's not. It's not Atheist at all.
You're going to be disappointed if you're looking for virtuosistic or what's the word I'm looking for?
It's
virtuoso parts of technicality and all that. Although it is it's cruising, it's moving. There's a lot of moving parts in the Till the Dirt record, but
very
it's not.
riffy.
But,
it's riffy, and I would call it almost kind of from a drum perspective, blast beat drum perspective. It's kind of tribal and hypnotic. There's just it feels like it's pounding your fucking skull in every second.
Yeah, it's much more violent than Atheist, and definitely more modern as well, which Scott Burns, really helped me with as well. And it was just great to have him back. I mean, I just love him so much. He's such an important part of where I come from and where we all come from. He was there would be no Sepultura or Obituary records or any of those things without Scott Burns. Like we never had the budgets to finish those records. He took his own time to make all those records happen back in the day. Death, Cynic, everything. He's just such an important man. But when he left this business, he didn't have any plans on coming back and producing anything. He had been offered a couple of occasions to come back and do it, but he always felt like he didn't want to repeat himself. He just felt like a lot of the bands were kind of making the same records.
Right. Oh yeah.
And so he thought that that's what I was going to send him with Till the Dirt. When I said, "Oh man, I got these new songs," and he was like, "Oh man, I'm going to have to." He just thought to himself that he was going to have to let me down. And so he was pleasantly surprised to hear that it was something different. So he really, at that time I'm left-handed, so I didn't have a bass to lay the bass tracks down.
Right.
So in the spirit of the Otis guitar, I had a friend of mine named Sean Osborne who gave me a bass with 3 strings on it. A super shitty bass with 3 strings. And that's all I needed I just needed a little bit of bass for my demos. I knew it wasn't going to be, technical shit. And so Scott heard about that, and one day I get an Amazon package, and it's a 5-string bass.
No way.
Scott bought for me.
How old is Scott? Is he our age or a little bit older?
A little bit older. I think he's 57.
So he's an old man like me then.
Yeah, post 50, we're all fucking old.
I got two quick questions, and one's more of a statement than a question. As you can see, we've had upwards of 25 people, which on a Sunday night at this hour is pretty fucking good. And as I said, Nick has 13,000 subs. They'll come watching. I bet you we'll get 500-600 views on this thing easy. So
I advertised.
I appreciate you having me, man.
It's not every day you got to talk to in my opinion, a legend.
I said it earlier. I was jizzing all over.
Beat me to it. Fuck.
Just I'm old. I've been around a while.
Josh, that's true. That's actually true. Josh Coe, really cool guy, says Kelly's one hell of a down to earth guy. Yeah, he is, man, no doubt. He's a real guy. That's the thing. My buddy Jimmy, I got to shout him out real quick. Future Ruins. This guy, I love this guy, and I mean that. Like, I love this guy. I've only known him a year. He just sent me a laptop.
Nice. Wow.
Because my laptop, I rolled over on it, broke it, and because of my health condition and fighting for disability, I can't afford to buy one. He sent me one. I love you, dude.
I'll see you future.
Last thing. Let's say. Okay, so last question. I actually had this way down the way, and I asked you earlier, what do you like to do in your spare time? This is a statement I wrote out that I wanted you to hear. It says, I see by all appearances that you are a killer dad to your daughter and young son. Tell me a little bit about the importance of being a father, husband, and how that affects your ability to be a full-time musician, because that particular lifestyle job isn't an easy one to maintain a normal lifestyle. So I recognize that just simply by looking at a couple things, simply looking at your Facebook page and talking to you the couple times I did. I'm like, this guy is fucking real, dude. This guy is as real as it gets. This is a good human being right here. This guy deserves success.
Well, thank you, man. I love being a dad. As I mentioned, it's one of the greatest things you can do is, my father was not a great dad to me. So if anything, I learned from him how not to be. And I wanted to write that sort of course.
Same here, dude. Same here.
And my mother was amazing, and without her, none of this would be possible. And so I just, I had those two examples, and I was like, well, I'm going to be more like my mom. You know what I mean? And my mom sacrificed everything to get that. Now I have a little bit of my dad. Well, I didn't sacrifice everything, although I just balanced, everything. So that's where my wife comes in. My wife makes it possible for me to be able to go out and do this at 50 plus years old with a young son, and I'm not gone that much, but, if I got to leave for 30 days, it's a big deal,
Yeah.
And you have to have a supportive wife to hold it down for you. So, I mean, without her, I wouldn't be able to do that. And it really takes people around you, like, my family, my close friends, that help make it possible for me to be able to continue to do this, because it's not a really super lucrative business to be in. It has its little spurts and moments, but the money.
But you're also not on tour 24/7 like a band like Motley or something like that, where there's a giant machine behind everything.
No, like Metallica tours for 2 years. Like I don't want it to. I think that's one of the reasons why Metallica had the problems that they had in the early, when they made that movie. I think you just got to kind of. I think the quickest way to break it, I think the best kind of touring is just 3 weeks at a time. You go out and do 3 weeks, come home, recharge your batteries, go back and do 3 more weeks. But if you do fucking 3 months and you got kids, I mean, you really start losing the day to day of, kids change so much in a quarter of a year.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, as I mentioned, my daughter has autism. That was a very difficult thing for her, because, it's hard for me to explain to her what I'm going to do, but she understands. And my son is super supportive. He came to the show in Tampa at 5, and that was one of the greatest moments of my whole career. I have a great picture of me holding him on stage right before we do Piece of Time, and I was like, "This is my little piece of time." And
that's killer.
And, oh man, it was so fucking cool. And that was just in May of this year, and he had headphones on, and it was just to be on stage and look out and see him, and he was up on the shoulders of his grandpa, and so that shit just matters to me. I mean, it's just, anybody with kids, I think, can attest to the fact that there's just this uniqueness to having somebody that really depends on you, like, not just friends. Oh man, I really love you. I love you. Those kids love me, and I fucking love them on a level that I've never loved before. So I can't say enough about how fulfilling that is, and that leaks into everything else that I do. Playing music, touring, being a good friend to people, being honest and being open. The kids are so fucking honest, and I love that about them as well. That before they get polluted by schools and high schools and colleges, you have this fresh little pure mind. Little human brains are the best. They don't pull punches, man. They'll tell you if you stink. They'll tell you if you look like shit. They just give you the real deal, and I love that honesty about them. So
they'll say, "Daddy, don't dye your beard anymore." I'm like that. Hey, you're a beautiful soul, dude, and I mean that.
Thank you, man.
For real. So, what I wanted to ask you is the last question, then we'll hit these CDs and get you out of here. What are your what's your favorite concert memory or memories? And granted, you haven't played a ton of shows, but from what you've done, what stands out to you as a crowning moment, or where you were just like, man, I'm overwhelmed by this?
I have done a ton of shows.
Well,
between Neurotica and I've done hundreds.
Yeah, I didn't mean it that way. I meant with Atheist. I'm sorry.
Well, even with Atheist, I mean, we did a lot of touring, but not as much as I think defining moment for Atheist live would be Wacken. Yeah, Wacken and Hellfest. Actually, Hellfest pound for pound, but Wacken was the first time we'd ever played for that amount of people. So Hellfest, we'd already played Wacken, so that shock of that wasn't quite the same. But the reaction that we got at Hellfest in France, there's a video from Clisson, France. If you type in Atheist in Clisson, France,
right,
of the video filmed from the side of the stage, will tell you, like, when we were told, as soon as you get done playing, get the fuck off stage. There's 5 minutes to sit and chat. Don't be dicking around out there. We got to get the next band on. So we played, and the crowd just went nuts for probably 8-9 minutes, like nonstop. Atheist.
I'm gonna find that one because I haven't seen that one.
And I went backstage even, and the rest of the guys went to the front and soaked it all up. And somebody backstage was like, "You have to go back out there, man. Like that." and we weren't playing another song or anything, but he'll see me come running back out, and then it was just this great moment for me and Steve. Steve's brother was there,
really?
Who had never seen him play before, like in all the years that he'd been playing, he'd never seen his little brother play, and where he was 40,000 people. It was incredible. It was just, I dove out in the crowd.
Was it terrifying to walk out in front of that amount of people when you're used to playing at 500 or what now?
No, it's terrifying to walk out in front of 5 people.
Yeah.
You know, the shows with 25 or 30 people back in the day when we were kids, those were terrifying. To me, man, 5,000 and more people are easy to control. You know, you can be like, put your fucking hands in the air, and everybody puts their fucking hands in the air. And, you know, and as long as you're delivering the goods, you know, musically, and they have respect for what you're doing. But I've always found larger crowds to be easier to deal with, and there's nothing worse. That's why I would never do karaoke. I could never sing karaoke. It's terrifying to me that people go into a bar with 8 people sitting there staring at them singing a fucking Drowning Pool song. I could never do that. I wish I could do that. But
I used to joke that karaoke is Japanese for tone deaf.
Terrifies me, man. That kind of shit.
Nick, did you have any specifics? You said you had 1 or 2.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'll be honest. You asked a lot of them.
I did them all. Yeah.
Yeah, but no, I had one, and it kind of it's one of those things like I never really paid attention to much, and still is not like a big thing for me. It was like lyrical quality, and like when I first got into death metal, it was bands like Cannibal Corpse, Obituary, Deicide, and, you know, they had very just transparent themes and everything. But years later, when I got into Atheist, you know, when these reissues came out, I was like, man, you know, this band is often lumped in that whole, you know, category like the Florida death metal scene, even though it was like, man, this sounds way different. But I can kind of see how it fits, but, you know, it's almost square peg, round hole. But lyrically, that was, you know, you guys were very cerebral, and like there was this, you know, sort of like stream of consciousness about how the songs flowed, and lyrically too. I just always wondered, like, the approach to that. Like,
I was always a fan of Neil's lyrics from Rush. You know, I mean, I thought that he wrote incredible stuff. I felt like Robert Plant was a great lyricist. You know, I always just liked things that were. I love words and I love language, and I love to say things 10 different ways. You know, I think that one of the most boring things about pop music is their just basic use of the language. It's just this predictable, you know, run on words. Yeah, and I just like to say things differently, and I've always been that way. And I don't know why, I guess, but it has to come from that influence, I guess, of, you know, I will. What's the line I always use? I will dine on honeydew and drink the milk of paradise.
Oh, yes.
Like, come on, man. That's, you know, they're just, words are beautiful, man, when you put them together in the right way. And so I never wanted to be like, well, I'm going to rip your throat out and fucking shit down your neck and fucking, you know, I mean, I just never was into like violent and bloody. It's just, I was never a horror movie fan or any of that. So I always just sort of leaned into other things. And I was a big fan of aliens and reincarnation and the idea of that. And yeah, so I just try to, if I write a line and it seems too ordinary, I'll be like, okay, well, how can I say this differently? And then I've kind of come up with things like that. I like to use words in a different way, you know, or words that aren't used typically in a song. Just always been, you know, I think it's as important as the music, you know, in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
You know? So, yeah.
I mean, like,
talking about Neil, I mean, Neil as an influence that's top shelf right there, right?
Oh man, yeah, he's just so important to my musical circuitry.
and definitely, Kelly, you have. I think a lot of people think that all metalheads are fucking knuckle dragging, you know, dirt bags and all that shit. And you're extremely intelligent. I mean, that like you do talk on a different level. I mean, that's just, you know, without regards to the fucks. I mean, we all use that, and unfortunately, that's how it goes. But I way overuse that. I've
always had a filthy mouth, you know. And I think there's this other popular guy on the internet there where somebody was asking, like, why do you cuss like that? He's like, it's so much more effective, you know. I mean, holding back. I love colorful language. I've never been offended by somebody, you know, by the fucks and the shits. And to me, it's passion. You know what I mean? When you hear British people talk, you know, fucking hell, you know, you don't think about it. They say, yeah, fucking cunt. You know, like, what'd you say? Like, oh, you didn't say that, did you? Yeah, but this is the way they say it. Somehow it's not as offensive. And I think it's, it's all, I love colorful language. And I think, I wish kids were allowed to cuss, to be honest with you. I think it sucks that kids have to wait until they're 18 years old.
It is funny how we try to shield. It is funny how we try to shield our little kids from it. But by the time they get, my kids are 25 and 27. My daughter and my other daughter, and I'll never forget the first time my daughter's like, "Oh fuck," and I'm like, I looked over at her and she's like, "Oh," I'm like, "It's cool, babe. I got it."
If Thor came home from kindergarten, he was like, Daddy, I was on the playground and this fucking bullshit happened, I would just start laughing inside. But society tells me that I have to. No.
Yeah.
You can't
don't use that language.
But when I tell him you can't have that language, in my head I'm thinking, why? Why can't he say that? Because
exactly,
if he stubs his toe, he doesn't have to go barnacles.
Right.
Like SpongeBob, like, oh fucking, he should be able to go, fuck, that hurt, my toe, and because that's the appropriate response.
Yeah.
Fuck.
Yeah.
And
I tasted dial soap.
Shazbox,
all right, we're gonna hit a couple quick ones because I definitely want to get you out of your wife before your wife kills you. Do you know this one?
Life is just a fantasy, right?
Do you remember that album?
Oh yeah, not the album, no, but
no? Okay.
I didn't travel deep into it, but I remember that,
Dude,
I didn't hate it. It was all right.
Sold him 2 million albums, man. He did something like. Now I am showing you the thing we did a deep dive on. Do you know this band at all?
What's it say?
Stone Fury.
No, sir. I wouldn't even listen to that.
Do you know who that?
You know why? Because that name. When we go talk about lyrics and
right.
Stone Fury sounds like the worst cover band ever. Like, Stone Fury.
Do you know who?
See us tonight at the fucking Trickle Deck or something. That's what I think of immediately. But who is it?
Do you know who Lenny Wolf is? Do you know that name?
Yeah. Kingdom Come.
Kingdom Come. That was his first band, Stone Fury. Yeah. This album, I'm not lying. It fucking ripped.
Kingdom Come. Actually, I want to say something about that. That album was really good.
With the first one? The first one?
I liked it a lot. I thought there was.
I love that album, dude. Get It On and fucking Hideaway and
his voice is cool.
Killer songs on there. All right. Yeah. We already talked about this kind of classic fucking album right there.
Behind the Door and what was it? Give me some other ones.
Take your fingers from my hair. La la song. La 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 la.
The La La song, yeah.
And then the best one on here, man. Tell me what you want.
So good, man.
So good. That fucking guy, and that guy's a ripping goddamn guitarist. We already kind of talked about this, but this is a fucking banger album. I mean, this album just absolutely rules. If you like prog metal, you like Queensryche, you like Fate's Warning, this is as good, if not better, than a lot of their output, quite frankly.
I mean, I was literally there while they were writing it. I was in 3 doors down listening to that amazing shit come out of the warehouse door that, we had these, pull-up garage kind of rehearsal spots. So
right.
like a storage, like where people store their stuff. And so they had a really nice PA system. And I just remember, listening to Mayday, the song Mayday. Like, I'm not sure if it's on that album or which album was that? Yeah, Mayday, I think is on that album, isn't it? Or Red Sharks?
No, Red Sharks is on here.
Which album is that? Transcendence?
Lady of Winter, Painted Skies, Mask of Red Death, In Dark Places, Where Dragons Rule, Lonely Burning Bridges. What a song. Holy fuck.
Yeah, so the album before that, I actually prefer more.
It might be on that one, and I have it, but I don't see.
We had the Attic song. The Attic.
Oh, God. Do you know that, Nick? You know.
All right, that's another one. Like in terms of like classic metal, I still have a lot to brush up on.
Jesus,
but I've heard of the name. Oh my God!
There's a song called Mayday. Oh, and they have Dragon Lady too. Dragon Lady is a killer.
Oh, song. Killer, man!
Really, really good song. So that
Mask of the Red Death.
In the beginning, like when they first put those masks on her face, like I was there the night that they found out they were managed by this guy that had this label called, I think, Par Records or whatever, and they came down. I remember the drummer was I was closer with the drummer at the time, and he was like, "What do you think of these masks?" And I was like, I just couldn't understand why they were doing that because they were so good. They didn't need a gimmick.
Yeah, right.
Anyway, and I just really felt like that took away from how good they actually were. In the beginning, people just kind of chuckled about that mask. I'm sure they can agree, and now that we're all older, looking back on it, they probably didn't need to do that in any way because they were just all so amazing. But yeah, so if you haven't heard it, then listen to Mayday and Drag. But Mayday's got one of the most impressive vocal performances you'll ever. I mean, holy shit!
I
He
have
could
it
sing
somewhere.
his ass off there.
I don't know what I did with it. I did something with it. All right, here you go.
I mean, so important.
This album.
Yeah, I mean, it's just.
This is their heavy metal album for me. Ogre Battle and fucking White Queen and Loser in the End and oh god, Father to Son. Brian May.
Brian May. Yeah, there's not a lot of Freddie Mercury. I mean, just an incredible band on so many levels. I love. So it's hard for me to take songs and know which album they're on. I just kind of I've always had these compilation tapes. So like Lily of the Valley, I think is one of the
That's
songs.
on Sheer Heart Attack. So is Stone Cold Crazy.
So good.
Oh, I love that.
And,
song.
How about this one here?
I'm in love with my car. I love that song. I can't see it. What is it?
What is that?
This is I'm sorry, I gotta look at Skylarking from XTC.
Mm-mm.
Don't know that one? Do you know XTC?
No.
You have to know XTC. Come on. Dear God. You don't know the song Dear God? Dear God, I hope I get a letter from.
Yeah, I know that song. Why is that essential in my life?
Dude, we're gonna talk offline about this later.
First of all, you lost me with the Dear God thing right out of the gate.
Okay, all right,
You got an interview with a guy from Atheist. So I'm like, is that Autopsy?
That is Autopsy Mental Funeral, one of the first death metal albums I ever bought. That's an OG press right there. This is a haunting, freaky, scary fucking album, man.
It's Chris Reifert, dude. His vocals are they're dramatic. It's almost performance art when it comes down to Chris Reifert's delivery. Like seeing him live at MDF finally, it was like, my God, dude, he is fucking selling it. Every horrifying thing. It's amazing.
He's awesome though. And the best part about him is when he talks, he sounds so weirdly not like his death metal persona. He sounds like some surfer dude, sort of kind of. He's just so cool.
I think he knocked his mic off
of
the mic stand while we were playing. He's like, oh fuck.
Here's an important one, right?
So important. Yeah, that's the fundamentals for me, man. Like, don't break the oath. I spent so many hours altered mind listening to that record, and it's funny because Melissa actually, it was also another record where Satan's Fall, that song in particular, sort of let me know that hey, I can go from this moment to that moment to this moment to that moment and then back to that moment again, and it's just like this chain of feelings and movements, and I credit them for me personally allowing that in my songwriting. I can go from this part and completely change gears and go into a different moment, and it's okay. And that's what I got from that.
How about this one? Can you see it?
I can't. Master?
Martyr?
I think I'm friends with one of those guys. I didn't.
Dan Mongan? Yeah, Chewy.
Yeah, I think we played together in Chicago Power Fest a few years back, but never spent much time.
Dude, that they definitely have some atheists in
but he's
them.
Playing with Voivod, right?
Huh?
Isn't he playing with Voivod as well?
He's Voivod's main guy now. Brilliant guy. What a fucking sweetheart. Another amazing human being.
Killer player too. I remember watching him.
My first interview. I got 4 more.
Very important, but you wouldn't think it would be because of the simple nature of it. And Roger loved that as well. Like,
heavy as fuck. As fuck. Ooh.
Well, we used to make fun of that back in the day, but now I love it when I hear that. Again, I can't see.
What is
Uriah Heep, Demons and Wizards?
Yeah, I mean, if Easy Living and all that shit, right?
Easy Living and the Wizard. He was a wizard of 1,000 years.
Great band.
I don't know Easy Living.
All right. How about you mentioned this? I'm shocked that you brought this up, but this is one of my favorite albums, and I did yank these pretty much at random. Hawkwind.
Oh, Hawkwind. Yeah.
Warrior on the Edge of Time.
Missed the boat on that one.
Oh, dude.
Yeah.
It's Prague.
You're a power metal guy though. Like you lean more towards that power metal prog than like to me, Awaken the Guardian, Fate's Warning, very important record.
Dude,
for me,
anyway. That's a top 3 record of all time for me.
So good.
That is
John Ark, is that his name? The vocalist?
John Arch, yeah.
Yep.
Jesus Christ, he's so good, man. Like,
And Jim Mattheos, genius songwriter, man.
All right, and talk about great lyrics. There's tremendous lyrics on that.
Killer. But let's make mention of Ray Alder, because Ray Alder is fucking killer too, man. Once John left, I love Ray Alder.
Yeah, what was the album after Awakening?
Perfect Symmetry.
Perfect Symmetry. Yeah, I spent some time with that record. I used to have a black band, but I still prefer the Awakening.
This one might be a weirdo. These last two, but I'm gonna be curious. Ready?
Oh, Gary Newman.
Cars, man. I appreciate it, I guess, looking back on it, but that shit annoyed me in the 80s.
Dude, this is a fucking mega important album, man, for all industrial and techno. And all right, my last one of the greatest albums ever written, ever.
Oh, yeah.
The Cure, Disintegration.
Yeah,
not a Cure guy?
No.
See, I would have thought maybe you would be into them. That's a little surprising.
No, I can see why people gravitate towards that. He definitely touched a nerve with a generation of dark, lonely kids.
For sure.
I just couldn't relate to that. Tell me. It just sounded like, I don't know, it's just kind of whiny to me.
Well, that's that song right there is kind of their pop song, but that album right there, yeah, that album right there is dark as fuck, man. I love it. But hey, let me make 2 quick announcements, and then I'm gonna get you out of here. The first one is, speaking of the Cure, we're doing a deep dive this coming Saturday. We're doing a deep dive on the whole entire Cure catalog with Surge and Angel. So we'll be doing that at 8 o'clock on Saturday night. Thank you to Rick for the killer artwork that I struggled to get through and get the right picture on for Kelly. We got that. He did the artwork for me. What else do I have planned here? Oh, tomorrow night I have Tom Draper from Spirit of Drift coming in, and we're going to go through the Steely Dan catalog. What do you think of Steely Dan, eh?
Fucking as many thumbs up as I could get.
They rule.
One of the best bands ever, yeah.
Dude, I'm saying this with all sincerity, man. I love you. You're a fucking awesome guy. And Nick, I can't stand you. I don't know why I left you in here.
I know. It's
I love you, Nick.
Because you have taste.
But listen, man,
like both you guys. Listen, guys like you, I really appreciate a lot, because taking the time to give a shit about lyrics, give a shit about the nuts and bolts of what, instead of just driving the car, you want to know how the car works. And I think that's really cool, because a lot of people, even though they don't want to know, once they do get to hear conversations like this, it does matter. It's almost like watching a behind the music thing. I end up watching a behind the music for fucking Eddie Money, and I'm like, holy fuck, I love Eddie Money.
Oh, man.
Yeah, like all of a sudden I love Eddie Money even more now,
baby. Man, he had so many. How about Give Me Some Water? Remember that song? Just give me some water. Good fucking.
By the Mexican border.
Oh, so goddamn good, man. Hey, I want to thank the 20 or so people that were watching, and again, they, all these guys are just raving about you. What a great guy you are, and that's very true.
Love you guys.
I thank you so much for giving me 3.5 hours of your life, and let's stay in touch, man. Let's stay in touch.
Absolutely. Yeah, count on it, man. Friends for life, for sure.
And if you get out and about, and I'm well enough to get out, I'll be giving you a ring and coming to see you.
All right. Too much metal for one hand, motherfuckers.
All right, brother.
All right. 2023. Cheers.
Yeah, good luck on it. I guess you can't really say what's going on until you get the legal side of it wrapped up, right?
Yeah.
No, just rest assured, there's a really good chance that you'll hear a lot from me and Atheist and Till the Dirt in 2023.
Oh, sure. Speaking of that, what did you just dropped the news 2 days ago? Was it Friday? All the digital stuff is available?
Yeah, I definitely should mention that. We're back in the streaming world, and all the records we signed with Nuclear Blast, publishing deal for our whole catalog, and so all that is back up on Tidal and Spotify. It's been down for a couple of years. So all the new fans out there that don't know about Atheist, you can jump over to your Spotify and have a listen. And that's happening. And there's a real good chance that me and Paul Masvidal are trying to put together this Cynic and Atheist tour for 2023. And that's going to be in North America, Europe, and South America if we have our say. I mean, we've been wanting to do it for years and years, but I think it's going to happen this year. So our managers are working on it right now. I think it'll be a quintessential technical metal night to have the two of us together and go out and play. So everybody, when you see those shows announced, get your tickets so so we can have some fun together.
I'm going to ask you for one small favor, if you would do this for me, and I'm doing this publicly. I reached out to Paul about 2 weeks ago, maybe in that range. We're going to do a deep dive on Cynic coming up. I would love to have Paul come on because he seems like you, a genuine, amazing person. So could you put a little bit of a word in for me, maybe?
Of course, yeah. He's in Indonesia right now at a meditation clinic.
Yeah, he's doing a lot of he's tripping out a lot in Indonesia right now.
Yeah, he's a great guy, and we've been talking a lot lately, just trying to put this tour together. But yeah, he's incredible. I actually had a podcast for a minute called A Piece of Time with Kelly Shaefer, and I did one of my episodes with Terrence Hobbs and Garrick Boyer of Suffo, and then I did the other one with Paul, and we talked for like 2 hours. But I haven't published it out, but I got a really great conversation between me and Paul for 2.5 hours of just stuff that's priceless. So yeah, he's a good hang.
Put a word in for me, and I'd appreciate that. And dude,
yeah, just use my name whenever you're reaching out. Just say, hey, I was talking to Kelly. Kelly just did the interview, and he said that you were a great conversationalist as well, and blah blah blah. And then he'll reach out to me and tell me, and I'll be like, yeah, do it. So.
And he'll reach out to you, and you'll go, man, stay away from that fucking guy. He's insane.
He thinks I sound like a guy from Mudvayne.
Yeah, he thinks that I think that he's not telling the truth, but it's true. I mean, I'm gonna send you the link, so if you want to watch it in your spare
time. Much love to
time.
you, gentlemen. Have a wonderful, wonderful night. I'm gonna
play Detroit or Cleveland. I will be there.
Smoke this fucking cigarette. I haven't done smoke.
Oh, you're dying. You're dying for some nicotine, aren't you?
Yes.
All right, brother.
Thank you so much, man. All right.
All right, man. See ya.
Cheers.
Bye. Hey, Nick, stay on for 1 sec.
Okay. Well, I need to pee.
No, you're not allowed to do that, man.
Yeah, no, this is gonna happen. I would like to be in the room for it.
Okay. Well, go ahead. Go ahead. You want to pop back in for a minute?
Yeah, no, I'll pop back in. Like, give me. I'm gonna pee and huff down a quick cigarette, and I'll be right back down here.
Bye, man.
All right.
I want to end broadcast. Hey, thanks to everybody that came in tonight. You guys are awesome. We showed up in force. I think we had like 25 people at one point in time. That's amazing. For a guy like Kelly, he deserves to have hundreds of people in here, but I don't have that size audience. If you didn't like and subscribe or whatever, please do. And leave some comments, man. I mean, I like when people leave comments. Josh, I appreciate you being here. Tyler, I appreciate you being here, and I got to get in touch with you about something else that's coming up. I think I don't know who else is here, the rest of you, but thank you very much. Bye-bye.